indicate approval by saying aye. Aye. Hang on, I have to, oh, there, I've got to find everyone. Any opposition, say nay. The agenda is approved by a vote of 5-0. First thing we have on our agenda is Board Policy 1800 OE1, Fundamental 3, Social Emotional Skills, Level 2. It's why we have so many friendly faces joining us tonight. So I will defer to Superintendent Klosky.
So tonight is our Fundamental 3, which is really centered around social emotional learning, as mentioned earlier. This is a level 2, so we do have some quantitative data. Some of it's a bit truncated because of things that didn't happen last spring due to the pandemic, but we also have our qualitative, so our vignettes for you. And this year, as kind of an inspiration from Dr. Rundle, we have added other departments to this Fundamental 3 because it really does impact everything that we're all doing with students, but it also has impact for adults as well. And so you will see our maintenance on operations and our transportation department here as well. And they have contributed to this monitoring report with some vignettes of how those departments, along with our school sites and our learning services, have been working during these very uncertain times when social and emotionally everyone has had lots of different feelings and impacts that we've had to navigate through. So you will see that you have attached to the agenda the full level 2 monitoring report and the current superintendent interpretation for Fundamental 3. That being said, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Rundle, who will walk you through the report.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Klosky, and thank you, Board, for opportunity to present tonight. As Superintendent Klosky said, we have a number of our leadership team here this evening representing all departments because it truly is about, if students are the priority, then we have to think about how do each and every one of us impact student learning, student achievement. But if we go back to the values, that sense of whole child. And so our Fundamental 3 is about developing self-awareness, empathy, emotional and social intelligence, responsible decision-making, and of course, citizenship. And so tonight we're going to hear from our school teams. We're going to hear from departments, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth between those as we go forward. The first thing I'd like to do is just point and provide some updates on the quantitative aspect of this report. Thumbs up if I'm presenting the report. Thank you. As I just wrote a little bit in the narrative here, the report this year, we, rather than really updating a lot of what we had done in the past, our school teams, our departments, we really thought about what's the context in which this monitoring report is happening. This was one of the last monitoring reports right before the closure. We actually also had Fundamental 7, which is now Fundamental 5, that happened right as we were closing. But this was really the last one prior to things really going with the pandemic. And so what you'll hear tonight is really our response as a school district, things that we've accomplished, things we still want to accomplish as we go forward. The two main quantitative indicators in this particular report come from, one, the Healthy Youth Survey, and two, the Asset Survey. As you probably saw in there, we don't have any new data points to point to tonight. And the main reason is the Healthy Youth Survey, which would have taken place this past fall, was suspended for this school year. We will wait from the state of Washington and the Department of Health as to whether or not they plan to administer that next fall or next spring. We anticipate it's going to be one of those. Also use the asset survey, and this would not have been an asset survey administration year. And so we'll look to future years to determine how we want to sequence things once those come forward. What we did certainly do this year, and we're going to bring it to you during the superintendent's report tonight, is our schools did participate in a social emotional learning survey, and that was conducted through the Center for Educational Effectiveness. We knew we weren't going to be getting new data points from our usual instruments. And so a social emotional learning team headed up by Nova Williams and Beth DeGrace, they selected this particular instrument, and we'll provide some information for that a little bit later on this evening. So not a lot to report for you from the quantitative side, at least at this point, likely similar to the way we normally would. A few things from the educational effectiveness survey, as you can see there, in terms of students being hopeful and trending in a pretty similar direction, slightly up in some areas, or kind of trending where we had been before. So I'm happy to take any questions about just some of the quantitative pieces, some of the impacts we've had before we move on to the qualitative stories. Scrolling through here. Not seeing any. We will jump right into our quantitative or our qualitative indicators. In the qualitative indicators, we really break it down by the 4 core themes that are in the fundamental itself. Rather than addressing one by one, I'm going to allow each of the teams just to talk about what they've really been working on in their department or in their schools since last March. As I listened to Derek Franklin at the breakfast, the Giving from the Heart, what is traditionally the Giving from the Heart breakfast, but Rise Up this year for our Youth and Family Services, I think what he had stated, along with Harry Brown and others, is important for us to remember. And that is, even as students come back into our schools, even as things maybe return to something that resembles where we were a year ago, the anticipated impact on social emotional learning on the experience of our students is going to stay with them, and it's going to stay with our staff. And so I think that's a piece that we're already thinking about as we project out into the future. So with that, why don't we go ahead and start with the high school. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Walter Kelly. He has a couple of the associate principals with him this evening as well to give us just some insights about the high school. And then I think, President Lurie, do you want to do questions from each group after they present, or would you rather just wait until everyone has a chance?
I think let's stop and do questions during. And Tam, did you have a question or comment?
I can make a comment later, but if you want just to kind of stick chunk by chunk, I can just quickly ask right now.
Sure.
Great.
So Fred, I wonder if your team has talked about if when you look at the outcome of this and just kind of looking over the changes, right? It seems like we're doing a really good job in a lot of the programs that we are doing in about how to recognize and empathy and conflict resolution, and very tangible activities that students can look outward. But then it doesn't seem like a lot of the internal kind of like, how do I feel about myself? I feel good about myself. I like myself. I wonder if the second step programs focus on that, or what kind of program is tied to that, because I feel like this is where it's going. Second step, all the other things that we're doing might be more with students. So just kind of hearing your perspective on that.
Great. I might, inviting in the principals' voices here might help provide that context, especially around some of the second step, because it really does start to drill down into both in very explicit ways as well as implicit ways and how we're doing that. You'll also see in the social emotional learning survey when Nova Williams joins us later on this evening, some of those questions that get at I'm worried, very poignant and clear questions in some of those responses that you'll see as well. Elementary principals or middle school with second step, do you want to weigh in at all to that in terms of what you're seeing? I know there's been some great stories from some students along the way that have been shared too, from families where students have at dinner tables or in times with families demonstrated, oh, it's no problem, mom and dad. I'm just gonna take a deep breath, think twice, and then I'll act. And I learned that in second step. And so there's been some of those, but principals?
Well, I would, from an elementary perspective, good evening, everyone. It's David Hoffman. We have been working on mindfulness for, gosh, I want to say 4 or 5 years now. And it's still, if not almost every day, many times a day, the teachers are still finding opportunities to ask the students to get in touch with their own feelings about, what's going on, both at school and outside of school. And in the context of COVID-19, they've been very, very open and honest about the conversations about perseverance and just some of those obstacles kids face every day. And the kids love it. I think that's one of the highlights of their day when they can share those feelings with their classmates.
Director Den, I appreciate the comment, and I think it reflects upon, there's a flow back and forth between your effect on the external world and that responsibility and who you are as a person that goes both directions. And a couple of quick thoughts. I know that Crest works very diligently and consistently on developing student voice through their student-led conferences, and also working through learning their own learning styles and developing self-agency. Through Islander Hour, a couple of things that hit me quickly is significant work on school life balance, reiteration what I know goes K through 8 here on mindfulness, and then growth mindset is a major point that we want to make sure that we emphasize and develop. And last but not least, just that grade, it's called GAS, but it's grade, academics, and social life, and how do they balance those and for themselves. So I agree, it's an important balance to work back and forth. Those are a few examples I can think of quickly.
Well, and at the middle level, second step definitely does that, asks kids to internalize the concepts, figure out the impact on self, and then, generalizes it out to how then do I interact in relationships with peers, with parents, and so on. But we also do it all the time in classrooms. We have been really cultivating the concept of democratic classroom at Islander Middle School, where it really is students taking ownership for what they need and what they want, and how they can advocate for themselves in a variety of ways. We also, just in the Dr. King lesson that we taught in our language arts and social studies class, we incorporated a survey where we were asking kids to reflect internally about where they see themselves in their ability to step forward when they see mistreatment or they see somebody doing something wrong. How willing are they themselves to act? And so really we find lots of ways to ask kids to really think about where they are personally and how that has an impact on themselves and others.
No, that's really helpful. I appreciate that, because I see that we're doing such wonderful work at the young, like at the early age, right? Because that's where my kids are too. So I see it. And then I hope that, that we continue the same intensity as our kids are getting older. And sometimes we forget that we need to continually do this work throughout. And so it's really nice to see like all the different grade levels here, to see that how it's really a larger picture and that we're consistent in our effort to make sure that our students feel strong and empowered internally, and so and then see how they can apply that outwardly. So I appreciate all that. Thank you.
So Principal Kelly, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some highlights at the high school, and I'll give it to you.
I'd love to. I want to go through several items that are in your packet or in the submission for Fundamental 3, but I won't go through all of them. So please excuse anything that I miss, because I know that the work goes well beyond the few minutes that I'm going to share this with you. First, I hope you're going to find a lot of connectivity in our programs and ideas and how they fit together. And also the concept of things have to be student-led but teacher-guided. And how do we partner the teacher's expertise, but with student voice and student impact? We have done significant work around connecting students to students, especially during this time, connecting teachers to students during this time, and also using some real-time examples that are going on in our world and in our community to impact the way that students understand their learnings. Want to acknowledge that this is the work of over 1,500 people. I just happen to be the one speaking tonight. On theme 1 on self-awareness, a few highlights are first, when we look at Islander Hour and the work that we've done. One of the ways that one that I want to share is the way that we followed up with a hate speech example early this past fall. We made sure there was prompt communication. Following that, we allowed students to process their thoughts, provided guiding questions and support and resources for our Islander Hour teachers to have those discussions with kids. Then beyond that, we made sure that classroom teachers had resources, guiding questions, and help as they supported the learning and the needs of their students during that time. And then followed that up with table talk questions for our parents at home, and made sure that that message and that moment was met with a positive response where students were impacted in a way which they could really learn and move forward and improve. Some of the things that came out of that, I'm going to skip a little bit in the report. You'll notice things that were done with English and social studies. Know that, and a couple of things that we did was we worked with student groups as they came forward with concerns. And after that incident, we made sure that the students who had ideas and wanted to impact what we were teaching in class connected with our department chairs and then with the departments at large as they expressed their point of view so teachers could consider that in planning lessons. A couple of other highlights. Student group on race relations actually is right now working through a series of lessons through Black History Month with a reiterative point that that this is 1 month that goes on throughout the year in our learnings and actions. No Place for Hate has had significant work with us this year, not just helping with Islander Hour, but starting to reframe that, reactivating and re-energizing our No Place for Hate group on our campus and making sure that they are vibrant. They're also working with Parent Edge and also working with staff development on our campus. I know the middle school has got the exact same efforts going with staff development because we're competing for some of the same days for ADL's time. And I appreciate their flexibility with us. And then explicit efforts to make sure that students have agency. One is through CREST. And as I just mentioned to Director Den, they start with students understanding their learning needs, making sure that they have a format to express those, and then that they lead their parent conferences with teachers on their progress. On theme 2 on emotional and social intelligence, again, we use that Islander Hour to kind of start the framework and then push it through classes. I mentioned the 3 things just a moment ago with school life balance, GAS, grade, academic and social awareness, and then also work with microaggressions, and that parallels work with ADL. Want to shout out drama. They've been having to do drama virtually, which is a really different piece. But one of the things that they called out was when they were working with the outsiders, they really unpacked that for students to understand their roles with regards to race and class and exclusion. Want to again shout out CREST for their continued work on healthy relationships. That work is also paralleled through our counseling department and our outreach to students, which is certainly not its maximum right now with COVID, but a continued point of impact that we want to emphasize. Director Den also asked about some of the things that we're doing to develop the student inside and self-confidence. So we made sure we started the year with executive functioning tools, organizational tools, and things that students could use for online learning, and began the year that way. And then something that I just am so appreciative of, we repurposed a lot of our classified office staff with our administrative team and counselors to develop what we call a care team. So their job every week is to follow students that, number one, their attendance or their grades, or there's some other at-risk factor that's popped up that's caused some mild concern, or they've been referred by a parent, by a teacher, or another student even that they're concerned. So they've been reaching out during this whole time, week by week, emailing sometimes, but mostly calling and talking, connecting with students to just try to keep the school support system together. Last but not least, you guys are probably very aware, it's a small number of students, but we are also appreciative of some of our classified staff and the admin and counseling staff that's helped with our pods. So students that are qualifying through multiple at-risk categories, not just academically, who especially were doing better before isolation and virtual learning, we are bringing in small pods of learning for real-time professional support, but with virtual learning still going on. So they're coming in small groups and have developed teams. So again, about just under 40 students that are enrolled in that program. Last but not least, with citizenship, I really appreciate one of the great things in starting this year, and with the Black Lives Matter movement, the protests that were here as I came on board, was the number of student groups that reached out and wanted to connect and have an impact. So whether it's BSU, whether the Asian Collective, ECAR, which is the Education Coalition for Asian Representation, I think I got that right, DECA's emphasis to keep us connected virtually and to do this well, and their campaign. And I love watching Islander Hour News, which is on YouTube and done by ASB. Chantel Torrey, one of the things we mentioned, her Empty Bowls project and working with giving students an active way to help people in need. So making pottery and auctioning that off to support not-for-profit organizations. We've also spent time in faculty meetings. One, just reaching out first to students, teachers to teachers on things that are helpful and that they feel that they just want to shout out to one another privately or thank somebody privately or reach out. And then modeling that, one round with students that were doing exceptionally well, one round of students that they were really worried about, and then one round of students that they just may have missed. So the in the middle kid who's doing okay. And again, doing everything we can to reach out to students during this distance time. Jamie Robertson, I thought he did a really beautiful thing. He took his classroom and defined it and as a community and said as developing the common good in the classroom, and then expanded that to principles of government. So those are some examples. There are a few more listed in there. I appreciate the work of Nick Wold, who couldn't be here tonight. His work's been fundamental in our running of the campus and keeping us together. But want to turn it over first to Jeff Jones, and then he'll kick it over to Lisa on a couple of quick narratives. And I'll answer questions if need be later. Thank you.
Thanks, Walter. Good evening, school board members. I would like to take a few minutes to outline some of the recent work our counseling team has done with the social emotional survey that they've completed with the 9th and 10th grade students recently. And actually, even beyond the school counselors, it's been a team approach with the school nurse, our Mercer Island Youth and Family Services counselors, and also our technology specialist is incorporated in this, and I'll explain why. But every single one of those folks have had a touch with one of the students, 75 students, who in a survey identified some type of need. And those needs ranged from wanting support with mental health, physical health, food, wanting an adult to talk to, technology support. So all of those things required our team to basically spring into action and have an individual contact with each one of those students to see what their needs were. We did just recently, and academic struggles were also an option for students to choose for follow-up on. And then with those, we just completed the 9th and 10th grade surveys. And in March and April, we will do the 11th and 12th grade surveys, but the 9th and 10th grade, since we've just completed those, we'll have data that will help inform us school-wide as we support students with their social emotional needs. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. So just to kind of pick up on where Jeff and Walter left off, we are doing a lot of outreach to students. Walter had mentioned our CARES team, and that was really kind of an idea that he brought with him from Texas when he came up, and we, as the APs, we jumped on. We kind of approached some of our classified staff, and they just totally jumped on. I just want to do a big shout out to Kayla Lewis, Marcus Tibbs, Kelly John Lewis, Susan Robinson, Becky LeMaster, and Keisha Vineyard. They just really, along with our ITCs, Christina and Clay, they have just, their significant efforts in helping us launch this to connect our students to staff. Some of the interesting things, it's everything that they are connecting students to staff. Some students needed support in how do I even pick up my textbook. Some parents didn't know how to navigate Skyward and if a student was going to be absent. We've had things as far as like how to navigate Schoology. I'm having Wi-Fi troubles. My student is really struggling and I think that they're really depressed. How can we get some help? So the CARES team has just been significant in connecting our students and our families to many staff. And Donna, at the beginning of all of this, she at the beginning of this year, she talked about having students really feel that they are seen, heard, valued, and we treat them with dignity. And that is definitely some of the feedback that we have received from parents and students who are the recipient of those calls. And then just in terms of the learning pods, again, it's a huge collaborative effort. It's really led, we have some supporting members, Kelly John Lewis again, our safety team, our building guidance team, the front office staff, and then certainly our general education and our special education teachers as they are pinging all day long the people who really are doing the bulk of that lift, which is Marcus Tibbs, Kristen Britnall, and Kayla Lewis. They are there in that building every day and they are building relationships with students so that we've got that staff to student and they're helping students bridge the student to student relationships. And they're just really working together. Again, this is all under helping students with their decision making. So we have a goal setting process that they do every day with students, and that's their entry ticket. They're checking on them throughout the day on how are they going towards their progress towards that goal. And then they do an exit ticket at the end. And then that's how they leave. If they didn't meet their goal for the day, they come up with a plan B. So it really is just a great collaborative effort on making sure that our students are connected to staff and that our students are connected to each other, and we're building those decision-making skills in them.
Thank you, Lisa. Back to you, Fred.
I will turn it over to President Lurie and the board for any questions.
Anyone, questions or comments?
Sure. I love all the social emotional work and making this a caring place where students are valued and treated with dignity, provided agency. I think that part is really great. At the end, though, schools are all about grades. And, how did, so at least that's what kids think it is. And how does, and when how has that been reflected in this time of the pandemic? Are kids performing the same? Are their grades the same or not? Are they sliding or not? And how are kids coached when they get grades that are very different than what they used to get, perhaps?
Yeah, very briefly, David, thank you for the question. Very briefly, there has been a decrease of student grades or the level of grades during this time. In context, as we've been working with partners in California and also with Bainbridge Island, our students have been closer to holding what their standard grade would be compared to other schools, like schools that have been virtually. So while we're proud of the work, we're also aware that we have more students with D's and F's during this time. That's been part of the continual outreach. The second component of that is allowing more flexibility with the types of things that teachers allow for assessments toward credit. And we're allowing more late work and incompletes, but we're requiring that teachers work with us as an administrative team as a plan for students to resolve those and not just let it build up and cause greater issues. It's a challenge that we have. It is not perfect. We're doing better than just about anyone, but it's still something we're not happy with right now. And it's a fair point.
And I think it's continued work that we're trying to do as an entire system to remind, and I think you alluded to it, Director D'Souza, that the values that the community put forth and that you really worked and put together as a board and your predecessors, there's only one that's really about that rigorous and academic learning. The other three are about really the bigger whole person. And so it's trying to balance that and remind our students that our schools are more than places for academics. They're also places to become better people. And I know that all of the school teams have been working on that.
I think as well, one of the things we need to be aware of as we continue to talk about grades is how are the changes in the grades having an impact on students' mental health and social emotional well-being as well, because it is different than what they've experienced before, and we know that that can add to the stress and anxiety that students are already feeling, or disengagement as well. So it is definitely something that we really need to consider and address when we talk about the whole child.
Anyone else? I can't see you all on the same screen. I'm moving through. So yeah, just speak up if you have something.
I'll let Deborah, Brian or Maggie go first. I do have a question.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So actually, David, I would love to talk to you about the grade sometimes. And I totally, that there is, I think, a difficult balance right now, right? How are we teaching students to really perform the best they can during the pandemic, but to recognize that, they can't expect an A if, and so, but then everybody is expecting to kind of be where, how they're getting the grades when it's normal, right? How do we balance that? And I think it's really a larger conversation of if we're continuing just like push out that what are we inherently telling students, as we're going through this, but larger conversation and something I'm actually also care about deeply. But so as we're talking about social emotional learning and we're doing so much, and as we're doing all this, I know that from when you look into it, it's actually come from a very sometimes mainstream perspective on how do we deal with emotions and how do we show emotions and how do we deal with problems. And so I wonder what kind of strategies the district and or individual educators have been doing to put that race and cultural lens on how does this play out from individuals from different culture and the way that they see things, interpret things, behave, feels. We have to have that layer, but sometimes we're not educated. I mean, the whole social emotional learning is something, a lift that as educators normally might not, so I think that we have done such a great job in kind of embracing it, but now putting this layer of culture and race into it is another another lift. And I just wondered what kind of conversations or effort has been moved towards being aware of these cultural nuances.
I think we can, it might be a good segue to middle school. I don't know exactly what you were going to talk about, but I suspect that might be a good segue into, so rather than going to one of the other departments, maybe middle school, do you want to pick up from there? And then you'll also hear a lot about that in March when we bring forward the current Fundamental 5, when we really get into that equity piece. So there's a nice bridge between the two of them. But I know there's been some work explicitly in all schools. Middle school, I'll turn over to you.
Well, before we do that, despite the good segue, I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions or comments on high school. I don't want to go too far down the road. So if that's okay.
Yeah, I just have a really quick comment, which is that I think both from like the general kind of programs you're talking about and then the specific kind of stories that we're hearing, it's not, either or. This isn't like a nice to have. Like social emotional learning is not like a nice to have like fringe thing on the side. Like you can't have like top level academic achievement if you're falling apart emotionally and socially. It's like, I'd say two sides of the same coin, but that seems very like bloodless and cold. It's more like two sides of the same hand. It's like the kid is like the whole kid, as Fred was saying. It's like those three parts all have to work together. So I don't think that this is something that we pursue, at the cost of the academics. It's like it's like a critical part of the grounding for the kid for them to be able to learn academically.
Here, here. I think that's an excellent way to say that. Yeah, for me, fundamental 3 is the plate. It's what we do. It's the social emotional well-being of our students, and it's how we ensure that the students are the priority. I just want to go back on something that you said, Principal Kelly, that I really appreciate. And you said that it's 1,500 of us working on this together. There are 1,500 people here making these decisions. And the fact that you look at your entire community together like that really, I think, speaks to the integrity of what's happening, from administration to the staff to everyone there. So I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Paul, Morgan, anything? No. Okay. Just wanted to give you a chance. And then I don't have any questions or comments at this point. So I will just, Fred, please continue with your segue.
Great. Thank you. Mary Jo, Aaron, and Weston might be here. I'm looking at it across all the screens. He may also have, there he is right there. So Mary Jo, Weston, Aaron.
Yeah, so I think Mary Jo's going to start with just answering Tam's question about the middle school just briefly, then I'll kind of kick us off into our presentation part.
Well, I just really appreciate everything that you guys are saying about the essence of Fundamental 3, because we couldn't agree more. You can't really pull it apart from the work that we do every day, because it is the work that we do every day. And, along the lines of Tam's question, our Director Din's question is we have learned through our staff multiple training opportunities with the ADL in particular, but really thinking about our role, our authority, our culture, our identity, our power. And then we're seeing our teachers do the same thing with kids. In 8th grade language arts, they did this whole unit on power. And so the theme was the role that power plays in culture. And so kids were identifying their own identities, thinking about their own cultures and where they give power or take power, depending on their age, their role within their family structure. It was really interesting to watch them do that and then draw comparisons out to literature. And in every grade, and in language arts in particular, but of course social studies all the time as well, our kids are really seeing themselves reflected in text, having choice, thinking deeply about the identity of the characters in the novels and the role that those cultures have on our world, and then into the classroom and specifically on each individual. So it is pretty cool, the work that our kids are doing around this, and really thinking deeply, asking hard questions, having challenging conversations about race. And it's hard because a lot of our families have never really talked about race with their kids. So, and yet our kids are open and willing and really excited about the opportunity to have these hard conversations. So I appreciate that question. And, it just is a part of everything we're doing at IMS.
Thank you, Mary Jo. In talking about I would also just say that we have some renewed work around equity and inclusion with our JUST groups at the community, student and teacher level that we can share in a different presentation when we get next time we review Fundamental 7. I think it'd be a great fit there. So we really revamped our Fundamental 3 presentation this year. Took out a lot of things, but things that have been happening, especially around the pandemic. We know you've read the fundamental, and so you've probably seen the things around resiliency groups, the DBT training, and then the SBIRT implementation and follow-up by our well-trained counseling group. Weston Lucas, who's here tonight, talking, and that's our student seminars that we implemented. So go.
Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to talk, and good evening, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the SBIRT too, as I circle back to Director Din's initial question early in the evening about opportunities for students to reflect and make decisions based on what they're reflecting on. And so you may recall that last fall I presented about our partnership with Best Start for Kids and King County and how we'd received a grant to implement the SBIRT protocol That stands for screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. And so that was postponed because of the pandemic, but they have switched to be able to offer a remote version. And so we're going to be taking advantage of that and continuing our partnership. So all of our 7th graders this year will be screened using the Espert screener. It's called Check Yourself, the screening tool itself. And I think it's a pretty remarkable tool where students are asked questions about their mental health, their physical wellness and healthy choices, as well as what are their sources of strength. And then following questions, they get individualized feedback based on their answers. But part of Espert is also referral to treatment or that brief intervention. And so it's opportunities to be referred to school-wide activities or school-wide services like the resiliency group that you can read about in your packets and that Erin mentioned, the DBT, or even on the sources of strength, maybe students need to be referred to leadership opportunities like our web program, which is also in the packet. So we're really excited to continue our work with Espert. The other thing I wanted to highlight, and Erin mentioned as well, is our Friday seminar. The Friday seminars were, as we were planning for school back in July and August, were born out of the importance of shared experiences for kids. And when school is running in a typical fashion, we have the opportunity to have assemblies, to have those common and shared learning experiences. And so our Friday seminars helped us to meet some of that need. And that's where we would see what typically would be presented in an assembly or whole group learning. Our students have had the opportunity during Friday seminars, and those are Friday afternoons. But they've had the opportunity to hear from guest speakers. Our students have toured museums. We partnered with the Holocaust Resource Center. We held our celebrations of Black History Month and honoring Dr. King and Veterans Day. Our counselors are presented on anti-bullying and being an upstander. So there are a variety of things and common experiences that our students can access. And in addition to that, interspersed throughout, our teachers have provided opportunities for kids to learn based on interest in our Friday seminar. So our teachers are finding something that they want to share with students that's maybe a part of their life. For example, Pacific Northwest foraging, you may have seen if you read that. So where can I find food in the forest? There was also a music appreciation class. And when I popped into the music appreciation seminar, the students were using a rubric that they had designed together and using music vocabulary they had learned. And they were listening to what I would describe as heavy metal music from a decade, probably long before they were born, but they were really breaking it down and appreciating it. So they were hearing kind of snippets of music. That was really fun to join. Our teachers have led healthy cooking classes, mindfulness, fitness. And the rumor is that the week of the 22nd, there will be a baking segment with Mr. Lucas. I have not decided what type of cookies we'll be making, but stay tuned on that. But those are the types of activities that we do in our Friday seminar. And it's really supposed to be really student interest based and a common experience for kids. So thank you.
IMS, are you ready for questions?
Sure.
Great.
I'm happy to start, if that's okay. I was very intrigued by the offering of the DBT. It's virtually impossible for adolescents to get into counseling outside of school right now, and with the more limited access with the YFS counselors because they're not in the building. I was just really pleased to see that, and I'm wondering a couple things. How are kids chosen to participate in that group? Well, I guess I'll just let you answer that. How are they chosen to be in that group?
I can start. That's, as you mentioned, through our partnership with the Youth and Family Services and our Youth and Family Service counselors. And so students may be referred through our building guidance team process or our student study team as potentially needing intervention. And that's where we would identify students. And then the Youth and Family Service counselors sort of take it from there when students are referred and they can connect with families and meet student need.
Is there a way that parents and or students can refer?
Yes, and I think that through our counselors, through our building counselors who are making connections with students, that the need may arise in those conversations or with families through our academic and guidance counselors as well, that then would bring them to our BGT process.
So I'm just wondering, if with the kids that are, I don't want to do anything extra at school that seems kind of academic, right? I assume they're not getting credit for this unless it's an elective. And I'm wondering if you guys have explored that, both you and the high school, as our kids are very, with the 24 credit requirement at the high school and electives are hard to come by. I'm wondering if, something like that would be really beneficial as we are returning to the buildings and really, really focusing on helping support students with the, and DBT is a great way to do that for a lot of kids. I'm just wondering if there's been any discussion on that. I'm not telling anyone to do anything.
No discussion on that, but we'll definitely bring it back to our counseling team. We meet once a week with them. And so we'll put it on our agenda. Thank you.
We also are, Mercer Arlington Family Services counselors are also offering DBT skills training to parents. So it's been put out in our newsletter, and they have lots of parents who are working with them and learning and building their own skill sets so that they can work and support their kids. So that's another way that we are trying to grow that important skill set.
Great, thank you. Looking for anyone else? Any other questions? I'm not seeing any, so we can move on to elementary.
All right, good evening, everyone. Megan Isaacson, Associate Principal at Island Park and Northwood. Sorry, Mr. Tony Kuhn, I'm still in the building, so please don't get mad at me after hours. Had an IEP, but just to kick off elementary, I think, Director Din mentioned earlier, social emotional learning is really integral to everything that we're doing at the elementary level. It's really interwoven across our entire day. We do have specific time each day in our schedules for our second step SEL curriculum and class meetings and some of those connections in between. But it's really woven throughout. It's foundational to our learning at the elementary level. And we're going to share some of those projects and vignettes of what's been going on in our buildings. David, do you want to start it out?
Yeah, I believe Amy is next.
I'll start us off. Amy Batliner-Gillette from Northwood Elementary. And we each of us just selected one thing to highlight. But please note that though I may be talking about Northwood Elementary, as Megan says, there's a lot of similarity in that we work closely and share ideas and work to align our projects with different school-based flavors. So what I was going to highlight is that we've translated our regular routine focusing on a positive character trait to develop each month, where we focus on that and teachers provide instruction in the classroom through varied multimedia experiences and discussions and class meetings. So we've translated that into the remote and now back into the in-person crossover environments. We highlight the focus character traits on our Friday virtual announcements that the kids watch, and then there's a connection to it in our monthly Soaring Owl's Nest lunch that celebrates positive expected behaviors that students are demonstrating. And so this idea is to help kids identify and practice specific character traits so that they can further develop them in themselves. Our traits are things like resilience, cooperation, gratitude, patience, and so on. And several of us kicked off the school year with a school-wide assembly, virtual assembly about resilience to really key kids into that capacity to tackle an unexpected situation that we were all experiencing with the pandemic and to develop strategies to know that they can move through that successfully. So we'll continue this work as we transition our students back more into the building, but it's just kind of the way that we've translated between the two different environments.
Good evening again, David Hoffman from Island Park. Just a little bit under the category of citizenship, we all have student councils and they are still thriving under our different learning models. This year at Island Park, we still were able to conduct our yearly Cougars Huskies food drive. The items were dropped off by families outside our school. They were boxed and counted, and we were close to 1,000 items that we were able to share with community food shelves. And now their motivating factor of animals and their love for cats and dogs and all things that crawl. We're in the middle of our pet food and toy drive. So again, they might be small, but they think big and they really love both people and are the animals out in the world and want to take care of them. We're in the planning stage in a few things. We are talking about a campus beautification project, working with our art docents to perhaps create a mural that's reflective of the diversity, not only in our school and community, but in our state and country. And then the student council, this is exciting, has reached out to the middle school and out to teacher Lisa Johnson, who heads the Justice and Understanding Support Group. And we're really interested to hear what the middle school is doing and see if we can adapt that to the elementary school. And in, again, that spirit of collaboration, we're working closely with our sister school, Northwood, and their equity team to come up with some ideas between schools, and we'll share them with our other schools about what we might be able to do together as student councils across all 4 schools. So exciting times, citizenship, community responsibility is alive and well.
Hi, I'm Jill Kelly. I'm the acting principal at Lake Ridge. I am missing my West Mercer Wolves, but I'm happy to be serving Lake Ridge during this time. I wanted to share with you, again, Megan said it so beautifully. It is the cornerstone of what we do in elementary school. I mean, I think as parents, those of us who've raised a toddler, sometimes you feel like you're doing the same thing when they're going to high school or when they're going off to college. We really focus on that zones of regulation with our students. And I know our special education staff is really pinpointed on that with their students daily. And it really is something that we see filter out to all grade levels and all students, regardless of any special programming that they have. It's something that all children can learn, that self-awareness of their feelings to help them be more successful in life and learning with each other. So we do talk about that because it is important to understand how we are feeling so that we can maybe make a shift as needed to be able to be more successful. You know, and our kindergartners are the ones I think of when I think about these lessons, because they are the ones who are just lumps of clay who just come to you and they're just raw emotion, but they really do. And I've seen it in that transition between at home learning and now in-person learning. We're really starting to see them take those feeling pieces and move it into their relationships with others on the playground. And it's really fun to see. Our youth and family services counselor, Julie Matson, has been working with students on Kelso's Choice. It's a visual representation of what you can do when there's conflict that arises. And, you know, for kindergartners or first graders or any student, that conflict during play can be such a big piece. And so we're really working on that conflict resolution and that conflict management piece. It really helps build character and really helps kids figure out that link between big problems, what's a big problem, what's a little problem. And finally, what it really does also is it really helps us with the restorative justice piece. When students have that conflict, it's really important for them to not only understand their own feelings, but the other people's feelings and how those two can play in conflict. And so when there's a conflict, that resolution piece is really important. And our teachers do it well. Our counselor, of course, does it well. And we as administrators really hold strongly to those, to that concept of restorative justice with those pieces firmly in place. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I get to wrap up the elementary group, and I decided that I want to share something that we didn't share in our report. So in our report, we have outlined some of the programs and in ways that we are supporting students socially, emotionally, but I would argue that we missed the most important way, and that is with our staff. Our staff and our cultures and our expectations. We have amazing, caring staff that develop close relationships with students, whether it's virtual or in person. And all of us have a lot of stories that we've heard from staff or that we could share. And I just want to share a quick one that I learned about this morning. All of us have, all the elementary schools have arranged for an afternoon time where students of different grades can connect with a paraprofessional for help with their homework, their study skills. This has turned into a social emotional support for a lot of our students. They've made friends in these groups. It's a time where any fourth grader and any fifth grader can come together. They've made friends. And just yesterday, there was a student that came on reaching out for some help. They were scared. And as the staff member asked for more information about what was scaring them, it was all the news reports about the riots in the Capitol in January and all the videos that were being shown again. So this staff member was able to connect with that student and help that student know that they were safe, they were cared for, there were people that were going to make sure that things like that didn't happen for them. So while we have these programs in place, what really makes the difference is that individual relationship that our staff members create with our students. Thank you.
Questions from the board for our elementary team?
Brian.
Just jumping in there real quick. So I have the privilege of being the liaison to 2 of our elementary schools. And so I've heard from Island Park and also from Northwood that our kindergartners are extraordinary leaders and citizens, as they are the first ones on campus, and they are now welcoming older students in. This is very reverse from how it typically goes. And I would love to hear a little bit about how they're really leading the charge and welcoming other students back.
I can actually share a very short story. The 4th graders at Island Park had written some very nice notes for the 2nd and 3rd graders for when they were returning this week via Seesaw, and those teachers shared it out. And one of the 4th graders' notes to the 2nd and 3rd graders was something like, you know what, you're going to have the best week of your life. It's going to be so great when you get back. And don't worry, if you get scared or if you have questions and you need to know what to do, go find a kindergartner because they are the experts and they will help you. And it was just really beautiful to really position those students as the experts, and they are. And those are the older kids that are really highlighting and elevating those youth. So very, very amazing connections.
And at Lake Ridge today, I had a similar kind of situation where I had some kiddos that, this was this week, their kiddos were new, the 2nd and 3rd graders returning. And I said, do you know where you're going? And this one little kindergartner, because he was tall. So it was, sometimes it's hard to know, are you a 2nd grader? He said, of course I do. I've been here all you. So, he said it in the most confident way. Now, that was juxtaposed with Erin Battersby being at Lake Ridge today and seeing a little kindergarten friend bend over to pick up some salt. And she's like, oh, please don't put it in your mouth. So we still have kindergartners who are kindergartners, but it is so absolutely, I agree with Megan. It's so wonderful to see how they have become the experts in charge.
I love those stories. Thank you for sharing those. It's, I mean, I think it just reiterates for all of us that, no matter what age our students are, and including our staff, no matter what age anyone is, that the number one thing that's going to make them be successful is relationships. And I think we're going to be really relying on that even more so in the next couple of years as we come out of this, more than a couple maybe for all of us. And frankly, parents also, right? We've all been pretty traumatized. And so anyways, just thank you for sharing those. It's, just the more that I think we can hear those things and other students can hear those things, the more it really helps us realize that we're not alone, and that frankly, everyone out there is experiencing the same feelings that we all are. So thank you for sharing those. David, Tam, Maggie Ty?
It's fantastic to hear like how many good things are happening. Like it's hard to believe really how many good things are happening given how many challenges the staff are facing, like just even being able to teach, much less like get in the building in person, the ones that are starting to do that, like it's really fantastic to hear about all these initiatives and how well you guys are coordinating amongst yourselves and spreading good ideas left and right. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I would add on to that, Maggie, in that I feel like this is so comprehensive, and I really appreciate especially the support of student transitioning in. My family, we've been out to work. My son's been seeing us going out, leaving the home, and we're not like the Chicken Little type of family, right? And so we never just really talk about the pandemic. We're like, well, you're going to school next week, by the way. But I didn't realize all this time, my baby, right? He just started this week. He been complaining of a stomach ache. We just kind of ignore it. You've been eating too much snacks, too much candy during Zoom. But then as I start to talk to him, I was like, I'm the worst therapist because, he is just feeling a lot of anxiety, right? And so as you start to process, then he started to talk about, and then I start to think about, wow, it's been a year since they've been out. And I just didn't even, it's just like you get so caught up in things. And I don't realize, even in my own kids, how anxious they are. And they're not like they're verbally like, we're anxious, we're scared because, but he was just talking about the stomach ache for the last couple of days. And so it's so great that you all are thinking about, how are we helping transition in our students? And so for little kids, right, for people who can't articulate how they're feeling. So I wonder if, our middle school and our high schools, I'm sure they're feeling the same, even though it's exciting, there's that kind of anxiety. And the fact that you all are like thinking so broadly to comprehensively is really reassuring. But it took me like 3 days to really like, are you sure? Are you eating too much? We cut out everything. We cut screen time, we cut candy, we cut everything to identify. I know screen time is not identified to stomach aches, but we cut everything to minimize like, what is a problem? And I'm like, oh, he's probably nervous about returning to school. And when I saw this, I'm like, wow, that you thought about this already. So I appreciate that.
One of the things we've talked a lot about this year is we are having lots of first days. In a traditional year, we have that first day of school for 1st through 12th grade. A little bit later, a few days later, we have our first day for kindergarten. This year, kindergarten went first, and especially at our elementaries, they're going to have one more first day for our 4th and 5th graders. And then we'll start the same at our middle school and our high school. And that celebration that is the first day, it's a huge milestone. And even though we've had school and we've been in school, the back in the building first day is definitely going to bring lots of feeling of joy and excitement. But to your point, Director Din, also anxiety and stress and the what ifs that everybody has, adults and children on those first days. I did want to ask if any of our directors have any questions about the addition of our maintenance and operations and transportation departments. I don't know if Fred was going to go there next, but we have both Tony Kuhn and Patrick Rock here, and they contributed to this report as well. And I know they would be more than willing to answer any questions you might have about those two sections of the report.
I just wanted to say I'm just so grateful that they're included in this report, that we talk about our digital teams as well as maintenance and operations and transportation. We've talked for a number of years now about how it's so important for every child to have a connection with an important adult, a trusted adult. And that can be an educator, it can be a custodian, it can be a bus driver, it can be an attendance person, or a paraprofessional on the playground, or providing additional supports. So I think it's fantastic to include these groups in this report because you do so much to provide structure and support and encouragement to our students. And so I'm glad you're being recognized for that.
I kind of wanted to see the what's behind the door, like mystery videos now though.
That really was an awesome presentation that he did for a couple of weeks there. The kids enjoyed it. It really did the custodian a lot of good too. I mean, the guys really miss the kids in the building. They are a big part of the community and they interact with the kids all the time. And I also wanted to thank Fred and Donna for including the MOT group into this. It was kind of fun going through and putting this report together. Early last fall, we had when the city was having some started their financial issues or problems, and they closed the community center. It impacted our ATP program. And so the staff came and said, hey, what can we do to try to keep these students, employed or, feel as if, they are employed. And So, you know, one of our grounds guys put together a job task list, and we basically took over the Crest Learning Center facility, and we provided them with tools and training and equipment, and it's been a blast. It really has. And the one student, you know, he reaches his goals and he'll send me an email and want to know if he can take a tour of the bus engines, or he can drive the golf cart out on the football field. And it really is great. And, you know, I got to shout out to all of my crew. I mean, they really are amazing the way they adjust and adapt to everything that comes up. And they're awesome. They really are, from acquiring PPE to, I mean, all the little odds and ends that I wrote in the report. Yeah, we really are blessed to have such a great group. So, and just again, thank you for having us here tonight.
Patrick, do you want to add in anything from transportation?
Well, I think it's been a great year for us. I think what I've noticed is how much we as adults are like the kids, because I think we started off the beginning of the pandemic with loss of one of our bus drivers, and it was in the early stages of the pandemic, and we weren't able to have a funeral to go to and grieve. And so we were in the process of trying to figure out, okay, how do we communicate our love and respect for this driver who's been here so long, and share with his family how much, you know, we're going to miss him and we want to support him. And that encapsulates the pandemic to us, because it's a lot of new things, not knowing how we can go on, not knowing what's the right thing to do. But all along the way, even though we've had that fear of how are we going to do this, it's been our desire for the connection with the kids, our desire to be of service to the community, that's really even pushed our drivers over their fears of what's it going to be like driving a bus with a mask? What's it going to be like, you know, having all these little kids with all their germs coming by us and all the day long? But it's been their desire for the connection with the kids that has really pushed them to step outside of their fear and to go back. And so the one thing I learned a lot is a lot of the bus drivers, they have special connections with these kids. And we have some bus drivers who they've driven many of our teachers when they were kids. And so they, you know, we have an older group, but they're really a powerful group. We started off and, you know, we were moving just the special needs kids, the most impacted of that in the beginning. And we're providing we're offering transportation to about 615 people a day, but we're actually only transporting about 400 a day right now. And it's impressive, because I would say we get probably 10 to 15 calls a day from parents who didn't start off with transportation, who want to start going in the next couple of days. And I think it's about the connections they have with the drivers. It's about the service that we can provide. And our bus drivers love it. They come back every day, and there's not a driver that goes by without telling me a story of something one of his students did on the bus. And just, you can see one of the drivers walked in today and he says, I've driven this child for the last 2 years, and they were never more excited to see me as they were the first day on the bus. And the bus drivers just live for that. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be included in the report. I do think it's our drivers have always felt a part of the community here. So I'm grateful for that.
And Patrick, I remember the loss of our dear friend Marty Will from when that happened. And I know some of the bus drivers, colleagues of Marty's, were already organizing some letters, but we had former riders of Marty's from Lake Ridge who were now in high school who contacted us, and they wanted all of the bus lists going back from the current kindergartners all the way through high school of anybody who'd ever ridden Marty's bus, and they wanted to email them, and they took it upon themselves to set up a collection of notes that they then wanted to make sure they got to Marty's family. And those were students who were reaching out, showing that empathy that I know his family was really touched by during that very tough time for them right as the pandemic hit.
So President Lurie, I believe that concludes our Fundamental 3 report. And the board does need to take action with a decision on the monitoring of Fundamental 3.
I move that we find the superintendent in full compliance of Board Policy 1800 OE1, Fundamental 3, Social Emotional Skills.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Brian?
Yeah, if I can, I printed out the fundamentals here so I could get it right. The full fundamental says develop self-awareness, empathy, emotional social intelligence, responsible decision-making, and citizenship. This has been an extraordinary year. And so even broader than our schools, our administrators, our teachers, educators, our staff, drivers, operations, I want to extend this to our community groups, associations, foundations, our parents, our volunteers, our residents, everyone in this community, I think, has built a system that has navigated a pandemic and has really done the best we can by our students, which are our priority. So I want to extend and actually find our entire community in full compliance without exception to Fundamental 3.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of finding the superintendent and community in compliance with Fundamental 3, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The board finds by a vote of 5-0, finds the superintendent in compliance with Fundamental 3. Thank you, everyone. It is definitely, I think I could speak for myself, but I think on behalf of the board, highlight of our meetings to see all these faces who are working and having such a profound impact on all of our students. And we know that you have gone well above and beyond this year, and we are very truly grateful for the commitment you have to our children. Thank you. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or, well, your boss can tell you what to do, but thank you all. Superintendent Klosky, I know that you have, I believe, students, wait, I just lost you. There you are, you moved on my screen. I know that you have students here to help you. Is that the next portion of the meeting, or do we want to take a quick break?
I would suggest a quick break to allow staff to graciously dismiss themselves, and then we could come back and we would be then ready for celebration and recognition. Our recognition today is for African American History Month, and then tied to that is some celebration of two groups that you're probably going to hear a lot from because Principal Miller mentioned them for Fundamental 5, but we wanted to recognize them for their exceptional work. Particularly in light of African American History Month. So we're going to do that celebration as well. And so that gives us the opportunity to bring that group in also.
Great. So why don't we take 10 minutes for bio break? 6:25 we'll return.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Katie and Kelly and Litsa, we're promoting as fast as we can here. If you see students or others who are in there that we haven't promoted, just let us know and we can make sure we get all of the correct students in here as well. And staff, if there's any other staff joining us that I wasn't aware of.
It is 6:25 and we have almost everyone back. So we're going to give people another minute, and you guys that are promoting people, just let me know if you need some more time.
And Dreves, I think we're caught up.
I think so. Lexi just joined, so I have her in the group as well.
Okay.
And we're going to have a little bit of a recognition of African American History Month before we go into the student group. So if some more come in, we can always bring them in to introduce them when we're done with the recognition.
All right, so we have everyone back. Next on our agenda is recognition of National African American History Month.
Thank you, President Lurie. So as everyone knows, February marks not only the observance of Black History Month, but the week of February 1st through the 5th also marked the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by Black Americans and a time for recognizing the central role they played in US history. It was the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent Black Americans. Since 1976, every US president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Black Lives Matter at School, which began in Seattle 5 years ago, is a national coalition of educators, families, students, and community members supporting racial justice in education. It aims to empower students, affirm Black identities, and teach about Black experiences. Last spring, Mercer Island School District students inspired us when they took action in the face of injustice and led a Black Lives Matter march across the island. They modeled the way for adults and reminded us that their voice, student voice, is powerful. Organizers and leaders from this student group have gone on to continue pushing for and making change, establishing and joining committees, sending demands for change to adult community leaders, and helping to centralize the voices of many groups at Mercer Island High School with the same mission. In our classrooms this week and throughout the month of February, schools across the district will participate in activities that highlight Black history and support our Black students. At Islander Middle School, students are invited to use the Padlet digital tool to contribute to an ongoing discussion about what they think, feel, and wonder as they explore concepts related to Black Lives Matter. At Mercer Island High School throughout the week, classes will be having lessons related to Black history and discussions on equality, inclusion, and racial justice. Tonight, we are joined by students from Islander Middle School and Mercer Island High School. The groups are Justice from Islander Middle School, and that stands for Justice, the JUST group, which stands for Justice and Understanding Support Team, and a student group on racial relations, SCORE, which combined the two groups, middle school and high school, to create a video that explained the purpose, goals, and motivations behind this week. Student groups on race relations, the SCORE group, aims to uplift minority voices and address racism, microaggressions, and more in our high school. We connect with various culture-based groups, they do, at the high school, and allow students to create committees on what they are passionate about. Members can address anything ranging from better lessons on anti-Semitism to more comprehensive curriculum on the civil rights movement. The JUST group at Islander Middle School, which stands for Justice and Understanding Support Team, is focused on making sure IMS continues its growth in becoming a school that is safe, welcome, and a happy place for students, staff, and families of all backgrounds. So here tonight with us, we have the two advisors from each of these groups, and I'm going to ask them to introduce the students who they have been working with throughout this year in a movement that really did start as student initiative. So starting with the JUST students and their advisor, Litsa Johnson. Litsa, if you would unmute and introduce the students from Islander Middle School who are here with you, and perhaps share a couple of examples of activities that the students group has been engaged in.
Well, I will happily introduce them, happily introduce our group, but they will actually be sharing the examples of what we have been working on. So just like Ms. Kolaski said, is all about gathering students together to elevate student voice in terms of ideas about how to make IMS a more inclusive, less prejudiced community where everyone there knows and feels that they belong. So today we have Lexi and Naledi here to share what we have been doing and what we plan to do. So if we want to go in that order, with Lexi, what we are trying to do, and then Naledi with what we've been up to. So Lexi, you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so in JUST, what we're really trying to do is to hold more conversations as we work to solve issues resulting from systematic operations and individual acts of prejudice as a community, focusing on celebrating the achievements while also past issues that may have an impact on current events.
Yeah, I totally agree. As to what we have done and are doing, we've made videos on Black Lives Matter Week in collaboration with the student group on race relations. We've looked at images from the photographer Chris Buck about assumptions and stereotypes. We've been having conversations on self-care lately, as well as microaggressions. We also participated in the Black Lives Matter Week, and we plan on collaborating and have collaborated with SCORE and ECAR. And also, we have been working on compiling a recommended book list.
Ms. Johnson, anything else that you want to share from Islander Middle School and this fabulous group of students?
Well, I think just that we are always excited to make any connections with other groups that are interested in the same goals as we are. We recognize that we are part of a community. We're excited to be part of a community. And it was such an absolute privilege working with SCORE on Black Lives Matter Week, and we are excited for future collaborations with them and with other folks so we can keep improving our community for everybody.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Naledi and Lexi. I know that there are more in the group and they all couldn't be here, but this celebration of the work for the JUST students is for all of them, those that aren't here as well as the ones who are. So thank you all so much for being here and letting us celebrate your fabulous work, important work that really represents student voice. And now to Katie McCon and our, I know, I never know if I'm saying it right, so I'm hoping you're going to teach me how to say it right, the SCORE student group at Mercer Island High School.
Yes.
And I think we have, I think we also have Mr. Kelly John Lewis with us tonight as well. I think I promoted him. There he is.
Yeah. So Kelly and I have been working with this awesome group of students here, the senior officers for SCORE, the student groups on race relations. They came to us this summer to talk about how they can form a club or an organization that will better support students of color on campus and also bring awareness of racial inequity into our classrooms and into kind of the everyday life at the high school. And so we have Emily Yang, Jacob Grossoff, Elsa Langtout, Gracie Galvin, and Ben Molina here, and they are going to share with you guys some of the work that we've been doing and the work that we plan to do in the future.
Okay, I think I'm starting off. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having us. It's been awesome these past few months to have all of this support and just this collective conversation about what we can do as a community. As you kind of touched on earlier, we had a Black Lives Matter week this past week, which we think went pretty well. It was our first week, obviously, so there were a few bumps in the road, but I, for one, and a lot of other people in this club had the majority of our teachers teach really powerful lessons. I think what I was most surprised by was my calculus class, which, you know, isn't super inherently related to Black Lives Matter, but my teacher was really good at showing a lot of videos that uplifted Black mathematicians. So obviously it wasn't perfect. There were some teachers who didn't really have the notice to do it or maybe felt uncomfortable doing it, but we're still really confident and happy that it did go pretty well and a lot of students left with really impactful things.
Yeah, so, oh no, you go. Or great. All right, no, I'll go. Okay. Our club is sort of structured with committees, as Ms. Klosky said earlier, and we recently sort of merged with BSU and to sort of involve more and sort of streamline communication about a lot of these issues and progress we want to make in the high school. We want to make sure that this club is an ongoing thing and has a permanent residence in the high school. One of the reasons that we merge is because student participation in both SCORE and BSU is sort of low, and we want help promoting these clubs and making them a really great place for students of all backgrounds to talk about issues and continue progressing our school and how we address diversity and issues in the school environment. So another thing about them is how we want to definitely include JUST and the members of JUST in SCORE and BSU, and we'd like to continue our partnership with them and sort of keep doing the partnership we've been doing. And another thing is that we really need to start structuring both of these clubs around students of color's voices. As you can see, obviously, most of the officers are not Black or yeah, and we just want to make sure that student voices of color are being heard, and in the future that sort of we want that mindset to stick.
Yeah, so we want to, or at least I want to reiterate how glad I am with the school district support in organizing Black Lives Matter Week and helping us kind of materialize this week. And we are really looking forward to seeing this happen in the future and the following years. And recently this week, and I think maybe last Friday, we pushed out a student survey to obtain feedback and input about the overall success of the week. And my overall takeaway was that the students who didn't have teachers participate or give lessons for Black Lives Matter Week were kind of overall disappointed and saw the week as a failure. But the students who did have teachers who participated and gave a lesson in majority of their classes were extremely happy with how the week turned out. In the future, we would love to see more participation from teachers across the board, because I think this week was kind of, the first week. So we'll hope to see that in future years. And as far as future plans for SCORE and BSU goes, we want to continue working with JUST and possibly reach out to the elementary schools to see how we can foster a relationship there. We plan to create a mural on the island with a central theme of community unity. And actually last night we attended an Arts Council meeting to discuss about how we can make this idea actually happen. And we are hopeful that this plan will play out soon.
Yeah, and kind of continuing from that, we've been cooperating with a lot of different groups like the PTSA and obviously the school board and the superintendent racial equity committee. And we want to really continue doing that because we think that's the best way to keep changing the school district for the better and becoming more aware of racial diversity. And so, kind of going forward on a more high level, we want to, we would really like support in making minority history and ethnic studies year round and from the top down in every class, from elementary school to high school, because that's really the end goal of our club, is making the island a more welcoming place for people of all races. And so, different ways we can do that, hiring more diverse teachers and having discussions on this sort of thing, even in elementary school and middle school, we think would be really, really helpful and help people who maybe can't, engage with such complex topics when they're younger, still be comfortable with people of different races and get that education in some form or another, so that when they come to high school, they can really learn about the world, great citizens, and racially aware.
And I'm just going to wrap up. So one thing that we really took away from Black Lives Matter Week and from this year in general, as we've been trying to accomplish our goals, is that it's really important that this work comes from the students, because, it's the work needs to come from the students. But something that we've noticed is that we really need admin support. So with Black Lives Matter Week, our advisor, Ms. McCon, sent out most of our emails to the other teachers about them teaching the curriculum and organizing the week, which was great. And we're very lucky to have her because she's a very supportive advisor, but some teachers tend to ignore email from other staff members. And so kind of something that we took away from that was that the more admin support we have, and then above that, support from the school board, the district superintendent, etc., that's really important, because that will make people listen. And we really do enjoy doing this work and having students organize all of this, but sometimes what it takes for people to listen is the higher up voices. And we had a meeting with the PTSA earlier this week, which we think will be helpful, because we're going to start sending things to them for them to put in their monthly emails, which we think will help parents listen. But yeah, so something we took away was that we really need admin support and the support of the school board and the superintendent and everyone higher up to make people listen to us, even though we're perfectly capable of organizing things on our own. We aren't always capable of getting people to listen to us. Yeah. And I also just wanted to say thank you so much for having us and listening.
Thank you all for being here. We celebrate you. You are a powerful voice. We agree we all need to work together in partnership, but my heart is so full and so proud of all of you and the tremendous work that you've taken on this year with your own initiative. You saw something that bothered you and made you want to make a change, and we celebrate you for moving forward in making that change. We are so proud of you and really glad to have the adults that are supporting you here as well to celebrate all of you. We've been talking about one of the things we really miss in our in-person meetings is getting to celebrate students and staff. So we're so glad that you're with us here to be recognized and allow us to say thank you for all of your hard work.
And I just thank you. And I want to just reiterate, if you guys hadn't come together, these things wouldn't be happening. So you guys have way more power than you think you do. I get sometimes it has to come from the top down in terms of what is mandatory and what is not, and that makes perfect sense. But there's no adults in this community that could have done what you guys have done since last spring. So thank you for leading the way for our community. We all appreciate and admire that. Thank you guys. And enjoy your break.
And just to reiterate what Superintendent Kolosky said, you know, student-led and adult facilitated. And, you know, Katie McCon and Kelly John Lewis, Lisa Johnson, the principals joining on there, whatnot, but, you know, being able to provide a space in our schools, a forum is so important. And, you know, students are the priority, and it takes us as adults to follow their lead. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you for having us here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maggie.
I also just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for following up. When we first heard from some of you, first by letter, and then some of you came in and addressed the school board last year, I was like, oh, it's great to hear from these, you know, young people. Sorry, I'm that age. That's kind of how I think now, right? But I kind of thought that was going to be it, right? I was like, you know, I'm glad they're fired up. And then I really didn't expect to see the kind of follow through that I've seen from you guys. Like, you have stuck with it, you have continued communicating, you have organized your fellow students, you have reached out to teachers, you've got great supporters there, you know, in the form of both your fellow students, but also the you know, staff that are supporting you. And I'm just really blown away by how much you've already been able to accomplish, like everybody, like across both those levels, and, you know, maybe someday soon in the elementary school level too. And it's just really neat to see that change, that momentum, that you haven't let it go, even in a pandemic when everyone is stuck at home and you can't be like, you know, rallying in person. It's really neat to see that kind of like change making happening. That's kind of, I think, what we aim for. That's kind of one of our goals for students that come out of the Mercer Island school system is to see them be able to kind of like change what they want to get changed in the world. So good on you guys, and please keep up the hard work.
All right, thank you so much. We will move on to our public input. Hang on, sorry. Public input. The meeting is a meeting of the board in public. It is not a public meeting that guarantees interaction between members of the public and members of the board. If you would like to address the board on a particular issue, please complete the form attached on the website. When addressing the board at the meeting, please limit your remarks to not more than 3 minutes. Appoint a spokesperson if the concern is a group concern, and if desired, provide written documentation to the board secretary. Public comments that name or otherwise identify a district student are not permitted without permission of the student's parent or legal guardian. The board may direct the superintendent to respond at a later date to the issues expressed. I believe we have 4 individuals for public input, so I will let Andrew set that up. So Angela, go ahead when you're ready.
Sure. I'm just trying to document. Dear members of the school board, first of all, thank you so much to the board, the administration, the teachers and staff, and all the other parents who have made really extraordinary efforts this past year to support student learning on Mercer Island. And as you have all mentioned, the values of our school district state that students are the priority. And in light of keeping with these values, I urge you to support the continued reopening of school plans for all grade levels throughout the rest of the school year for all students and into the fall of 2021. Personally, we are a Mercer Island family that moved to the district last January 2020. I have a 4th grade daughter at Island Park and a 7th grade daughter at IMS. They had been in school approximately 6 weeks before switching to an entirely remote learning schedule. And as we approach the 1-year mark of when our school buildings closed in March, I encourage you to continue the progress that has been made in kindergarten through 3rd grade to bring all students back into our school buildings. As a former high school educator and parent, I have seen firsthand the emotional and social, as well as academic needs of students being more fully supported in the hybrid learning model. I applaud the district for coming up with a plan that takes into account clear COVID safety protocols and ensures that students and teachers will feel safe in returning to school. In the past year, there has not been a case of in-school transmission as documented on the district's COVID dashboard, and I believe that every individual teacher and student who has had the opportunity to be in school has contributed to those positive results. And the health and safety protocols put into place by the district's nursing team is a credit to this. My 7th grader, who is a part of the Compass program at IMS, has benefited greatly from just 2 in-person appointments a week since the start of the school year. I am truly grateful to our special education teachers, counselors, and aides for supporting her learning by being in person in the school building, and hope that other teachers and staff will feel assured by their model. I want to publicly acknowledge these special education teachers and staff. They have been there from September, willing to help my daughter and other students with special needs to meet their individualized educational goals. The joy that she has on her face when she comes out of her in-person appointments twice a week has been a highlight of the year for me. Hearing her laugh and learn to socialize with a small group of students in her program has been indispensable to helping her meet her social and emotional goals. When I see the benefit that she has from meeting in person with teachers and other students, it makes me realize how important this in-person connection is for the well-being of all students, not just those with special needs. I am eager to see that happen for the rest of the students on Mercer Island. I'm grateful to everyone who's made it possible for students like my 4th grader to return to school on March 1st. While I'm sad that a year of in-person learning has been lost due to COVID, the passion and desire that our students and families have to return to school only shows me how important that relationship is between teachers and students, and the importance of seeing their principals and other trusted adults in the school building, greeting them in person with a smile. It is simply not something that can be replaced by Zoom. Finally, I want to encourage the members of the board not to forget the families and students of color who research shows have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and in your commitment to student equity and inclusion, make them a strong consideration as you continue your efforts to reopen the schools. Please continue to stay the course, to commit to your values of making students the priority. If there is anything that parents in the community can do to volunteer our time or efforts to help make this goal a reality, I know there are many of us who would not hesitate to partner with you in making it possible for in-person school to be an option for all students who need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Next, we have Kyle Gerstel.
Hi. Y, the 25th letter of the English alphabet, as you all know, hopefully. Although kindergartners learn it, adults seem to forget sometimes. Why? Why are we bringing kids back to school? Now, I'm not against it, but remembering its purpose is essential to design a model where, as the district says, students are the priority. According to the district's current plans, IMS and MIHS students will be required to attend 6 hours of Zoom classes per day, twice a week for those of us who are going back in person, and 4 days for those who don't. Video conferencing for that long is hard enough for adults, but it's even harder for us. I know students who don't want to risk their safety going back to school in person, but are going to because they don't want to be on Zoom for so long. So why? Why are we doing this? So kids can interact more. Anyone who's been in a Zoom classroom knows that being locked on Zoom is not the same as being engaged. Despite students being the ones who are directly impacted by decisions regarding the hybrid learning model, we haven't been given a voice in these matters. Why? I don't know. I'd like to change that. Therefore, I started a petition for IMS and MIHS students who agree that 6 hours of Zoom isn't healthy or productive, which has been signed by over 140 members of the student body, and we're still counting. Since I remember hearing that about 50% of the work we do in class will be independent, we're proposing for all independent work to be done independently. That way, In-person learners don't have to go on Zoom, and online learners will only have 3 hours of Zoom a day instead of 6 hours, preventing screen fatigue without sacrificing any of the content. For students and parents who want to have opportunities to check in every day, there could be optional office hours available, allowing students to have direct academic engagement that they might not have received if the entire class was in the meeting. It'll also help teachers, who will likely struggle controlling online and in-person classes simultaneously, detracting from our learning despite intending to do the opposite. As one student said to me, "Why aren't they already doing this?" And all I could say was, "Good question." Thank you for your consideration.
Sorry, talked on mute. Keep doing that. Thank you, Kyle. Our last public input is from Kevin Wang.
I did not see Kevin in the attendee list. Oh, there he is. Hold on. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Kevin Wang. I'm a high school senior. I'm the senior class president at MIHS, and I'm just here today to bring a student perspective because I feel like there has been a severe lack of that during these school board meetings. Now, our school administration actually has come to our class to talk about this, but me and also my peers, who I'm also helping to speak up for, don't feel like our questions were adequately addressed during that. So I'm here to bring some of these to light and hopefully get some answers to what is exactly going on here, because we have noticed great disparities within safety precautions and also equity within the new COVID guidelines. So starting off, major school districts in the country like Chicago have agreed to provide vaccines for teachers who have to return to in-person teaching, as you guys have decreed, and also plans to close if positive tests arise, like 3 or more. As the leading district in the state, why has MI not considered the same approach protecting its students and educators alike? And it's kind of a rhetorical question, like why isn't this being implemented? On the same note, teachers are being forced to return. Without returning, they're either going to be asked to resign, take paid leave, or just have their contract axed. So first question is, for teachers who do decide to take leave or resign early, how do you plan to replace these teachers, particularly older teachers who tend to teach AP classes? You're going to be substituting them with substitutes. You guys have mentioned substitutes, but you're substituting substitutes with 2 months before the AP exam. You cannot expect the same level of education. And when we're talking about doing these things for the students, you can't just ignore the impact this is going to have on the students. You're going to notice a significant impact in student AP scores. And we're talking about actual loss of real money, college credit here. On the same note, why aren't we accommodating for teachers as well? From a student perspective, I'd much rather have my teacher teach remotely than have a substitute teacher who's been rushed in. And many other teachers have also expressed displeasure with the decision to force teachers to return, right? It just does not seem reasonable to tell teachers to put themselves on the forefront of the pandemic or quit their job. It's literally not in their job description. Like you might say, oh, they have to follow their contract, but many teachers have been teaching for 20 plus years. I have AP teachers who are very old, been teaching, national board certified. And to tell them that the position has changed and now they have to put their life and limb on the line for this underpaid job is, in the purest sense of the word, just unreasonable. There ought to be more flexibility for these teachers to be able to teach online in this same aspect. And also, previous guidance from the CDC suggested that close contact only occurred if someone was in contact for 15 minutes. However, the CDC now acknowledges that even brief contact can lead to transmission. A big complaint from many, many students all over MIHS is, why is the current district not acknowledge this current science in regards to close contact in their plan for quarantine or testing, and still maintains that you can break social distancing for up to 15 minutes at a time? Why isn't there stricter enforcement of this or any enforcement at all in that sense? 15 minutes is a very, very long time. Thank you.
I did it again. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for your thoughts tonight. That is the conclusion. We don't have our fourth person who submitted an email, so we will move on in the agenda to our student representative report.
All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so to start out, at West Mercer, the month of January has been focused on getting ready for the Great Kindness Challenge. And this challenge is giving students virtual and socially distanced opportunities to carry out acts of kindness that they can perform and then check them off of a list. And students were also assigned lines and scripts for sort of a fun introduction video. And this video was made through a Zoom screen recording and shared during one of the school-wide morning announcements via webinar.
At Island Park, they have welcomed back their second and third grade hybrid learners as well, which has been a smooth start so far and a great team effort. Faculty are proud of all their students, staff, and families for their flexibility and support. Island Park's equity team is also currently building resources for staff and students to engage in Black Lives Matter curriculum at schools learning in the coming month. So they're looking forward to diving into this learning in March. Classes have also been highlighting a person of the day as part of roll call and are specifically focusing on influential Black figures for Black History Month.
So over at Lake Ridge, second and third graders have returned to school as well, which is very exciting. The classes have also been increasing their amount of physical learning materials, with students being able to pick up packets and using them for assignments and tests. Lake Ridge has also continued their use of a drive-through library pickup, especially for fifth graders who have been working on a book report project to learn more about Black History Month. And students are also excited to finally hear the bell at the end of class again, which is such a foreign sound.
At Northwood, classes have continued to learn through various virtual activities, such as virtual field trips to learn about the salmon cycle and conservation efforts. Students are also learning math through virtual math-based escape rooms. Both students and staff are excited to observe Black History Month and have conducted lessons across classes through literature, videos, and discussions to learn about the past and present contributions of Black Americans and the efforts towards justice and equity. Students are also participating in school-wide lessons on how to safely learn as more students begin to return to the campus in a hybrid model.
So over at the middle school, students reported seeing an improvement in test methods. Many teachers have started using ClassKick as opposed to Schoology, which really helps teachers monitor students' work in real time. And IMS has also recently hosted a virtual spelling bee and had several students participate. And the school is also working to organize a trivia night in the next coming weeks.
And as usual, there's a lot going on at the high school. For example, in the past month, we had finals week for first semester, which was definitely interesting. It was an interesting experience for every grade, especially the freshmen, considering it was their first finals and it was online, of course. Also, we had the Week of Unity, which is now an annual tradition. And in Islander Hour recently, we've had certain interesting lessons. For example, a lesson on Holocaust Remembrance Day, a lesson on Martin Luther King Day. And then also, as you heard from SCORE earlier tonight, teachers were challenged to include Black History Month lessons throughout their classes during Black Lives Matter Week. And then also, as recent as yesterday, there were several class meetings with the entire different grades at the high school, which is just part of the recent push for increased communication before the transition to hybrid. And so I was happy to see that.
Yeah, so as for some stuff the juniors have been up to, some juniors were able to go in and take the optional PSAT last month. And then for non-seniors, yesterday's Islander Hour was a virtual class fair where students were able to visit teachers via Zoom links and hear some different presentations about classes that they might be interested in next year. And it's crazy to think we're already beginning the process of building our class schedules for next school year. So the time has just flown by, but it's so weird to think about. And then overall, students have been enjoying advisory on Fridays and Islander Hour, and this has really become a great time to check in with teachers, go to office hours if needed, and just get some work done. So it's very productive. And then also the art electives have also been getting very creative. As Principal Kelly kind of mentioned earlier, the drama improv class held a virtual drama improv show recently, which is really fun. And then all around, students are just kind of excited, a little nervous, as I'm sure teachers all are as well, to begin approaching this transition into hybrid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Any questions, comments from board directors? No, we're good. Okay, thank you guys so much. Sorry. Next, we have our superintendent update, board policy 1800 OE9, communication and support to the board.
We have two items we're going to update you on tonight. First up, in the spirit of Fundamental 3, Fred's going to go through the social emotional learning data that we've collected. We're still working on getting more, but it's sort of our own survey and our own data. So I'm gonna turn it over to Fred and I think Nova maybe to talk you through what that looks like, and then we'll give a brief update. There's not a lot to say, but we just want to make sure that everyone has the correct information for dates and reopening data. So Fred, go ahead with the social emotional learning survey.
Great. So one of the, and I think Beth dropped off, but Sue Ann's still here. One of the immediate action steps we took, especially as we were winding down last school year and thinking about the summer and into the fall, was really what was going to be our ongoing response for social emotional learning. And you saw quite a display of that this evening. Nova Williams and supported by Beth DeGrace headed up this committee and brought together a number of stakeholders who then started guiding the work. So I really want to turn it over to Nova to talk a little bit about that process, and then share with you this evening some of the feedback we've received from our first survey that we've administered with students. And then Sue Ann can kind of wrap up any other social emotional learning pieces that have come along with that. So Nova.
Thanks, Fred. Are you going to share?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So as Fred said, we had a committee. So we had all our Learning Forward committees back in the summer, and we really just started. I was responsible for heading up the assessment Learning Forward committee. And we had a break-off group that was for the assessment for social emotional learning. In our reopening guidance from OSPI, one of the requirements and the things we had to attest to was that we would, in fact, assess students' social emotional state at some point over the course of the year. So over the summer, we looked at a couple options. They're pretty limited because no one has designed a social emotional survey for a pandemic, since this is our first one, yay. And so we embarked with the same company that has done the EES for us in the past, so CEE, which stands for Center for Educational Effectiveness. We did some back and forth conversation about what it looks like and decided to move forward with that. So we've moved forward with that survey and then made some plans for how to do it. By nature of not knowing what school would look like or how many times the timelines would shift and all of that, we ended up obviously shifting some of our timelines for the survey as well. So we're not quite as far along as we would like to be necessarily, but I think we've done a pretty good job of getting as much data as we can in our circumstances. So I'll run through some of that and talk to you a little bit about who took it. So thus far by winter, what we've done, we started in the fall with our K-5 students. We kind of segmented those into K2 and then 3-5. And we sent those asynchronously. So we sent those out to families because it was still so early. It was a little easier to manage in that way. So we sent those out to families, and families managed taking that asynchronously with their kids. So the numbers are lower, of course, given that it was asynchronous and it was a new timeline and or a new setup, and everyone is overwhelmed. So in the middle school, we did assess some of our sixth graders. We didn't get a really big cohort because of some of the circumstances surrounding the survey. So we're revisiting our sixth graders here shortly, but we have just recently completed our 8th grade cohort of kids. So you'll see completed data for our 8th graders in here as well. And then the high school has completed their 9th and 10th grade students assessments. And they did that through Islander Hour. Middle school has done it through classrooms, and they did, both of those schools have done it synchronously, which is actually proven to be a better method, as we all know, that we get more return on that when we have synchronous action with students and teachers working through that. Our 11th and 12th graders are still coming, so we're working on those in the coming weeks. And then our 6th graders as well, will be assessing them in the coming weeks. The plan will then be to reassess all students K-12 in the spring.
We're not quite sure what that will look like just yet because it will depend largely on where we are and what school looks like, and we'll go from there. But we do plan to get a second data point that will provide us that second data point for all kids, and we'll have a good sense about whether or not we've made any growth or things have changed over the course of time in this school year, even based on where we are in our current circumstances. The seventh graders, you'll notice, aren't on here, and I haven't talked about them. They're taking a different survey at the middle school, and so that survey is similar, but they're using that at the middle school separately, and so I am less knowledgeable about that process, therefore don't want to speak to it.
Weston, that's the one Weston Lucas spoke to earlier during the SEL, the expert.
Perfect. All right, so we'll just run through these. What I tried to do is the scale is a little tricky. The way kids answer it is basically a sort of favorable or unfavorable direction. And so I put the color coding here just to give you that sense, and I marked them up a little bit differently than what it looks like for kids, just so that you would have a sense of that scale. In general, throughout the entirety of the data, you'll see that the blue is the most favorable and the orange, the deep orange, is the least favorable, which is fairly typical in our surveys. And so this is in response to the students get a series of statements and they have to respond to those statements. And at the end of the survey, they actually get a space and place to, in some ways, flag themselves and say, I have this issue and I need help with it. And so we found that kids have been doing that, and that has been our targeted work over the course of the initial rollout of this, because that is the most important thing. If a student has told us that they need assistance with mental health, then we are responding to that. So in this first one, the students respond to whether or not they are worried. The blue indicates that's the least amount of worry, not often. And then often, or almost always, is the deep orange there. Thank you. And the next one, similar vein, is I am nervous. Again, least nervous is the blue there, and the deep orange is the most nervous, meaning that they're most frequently nervous. Getting along with classmates, often to never are the indicators here, and you can see that in the color coding.
And Nova, all of these questions were framed as the current, right? They were asking these types of questions for getting along with classmates now, or was it getting along with classmates pre-pandemic?
It's not really either in some questions, and you'll see that here momentarily. When it's referring to in-person versus distance, they're not really referring to anything separate from that. Again, the survey itself wasn't designed for a pandemic, so the questions are targeted at the present moment and not necessarily comparatively from pandemic, non-pandemic life.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the next one, I participate in class, and this one does reference in those parentheses there, it says in person or online. So they are asking that question regardless of what the setting for learning is. I feel like I can keep up with what is being taught, often to never. And I think you'll start to see part of why we see some of this, the orange, increasing over these next couple questions, or statements rather.
So the difference between this one is I feel like I can keep up versus this one is the I worry about keeping up with what is being taught.
Yep. Thank you. And then these next couple as well are sort of connected in theme. I learn well in distance learning. And I think this is indicative of what we've heard a lot about over the course of the last several months from families and kids. So orange indicative that they aren't feeling like they're learning well, and blue, yes. And then this is about in person. So I learn.
All right, Nova.
When I'm with my teacher in person, I learn well. And you can see those numbers drop when we moved from distance learning to in-person learning. And so, I really hadn't examined this too terribly closely in the beginning because we were focused a lot, again, on the schools and, Weston and Jeff at the high school and middle school respectively, and Megan and Jill at the elementaries have been great at supporting that.
counselors at the secondary level are reaching out to kids. But I think that this data will actually be really helpful for us as we move forward into next school year. And we're talking about what sort of indicators might be helpful as we move forward to sort of track the progress of kids and help support them in their learning.
Sue Ann, do you want to add in any other context pieces that have been coming with special services, and then we'll take questions as a broad group?
Yeah, so special services has also been helping out district-wide with mental health and social emotional learning. We've been focusing more on the parents, and we've offered fireside chats for parents and mindfulness, stress, how to manage the stress, how to manage meltdowns, whether it's yourself or your child, and how to understand the function of those behaviors. So we've also offered parent space, which was another a group and to provide parents space for self-care so that they could practice that for themselves and others, because research shows that in a pandemic or in any stressful times that you take care of yourself last, and you really need to take care of yourself first as a parent so that you can provide that environment for students and or for your children. And then we also worked on culturally responsive strategies for building relationships with families. So I just wanted to put that plug in there that Beth DeGrace, who couldn't stay on, really had led that charge with some of our school psychologists to provide those additional workshops throughout the district.
So we'll open it up to questions about Nova's presentation or any other aspects.
I don't really have a question. I have more of a comment. I really like the simple, straightforward questions. When we do the EES, right? It's complicated. And, you know, I have to really think about what question is being asked. I know that we get that feedback too. I know you guys have gotten that feedback. So, and I think also our students are much more likely to answer it, frankly, when it's easier. You don't have to think too hard. You know how you're feeling, just put it, you know, mark it down. So that's really helpful. Thank you. And it also, I like that, you know, we know, I don't know. I just, I appreciate it. It's good information. Tam, go ahead.
Thanks, Nova. During this time, I know it's super hard to collect data. It's just another thing. And but I'm so thankful that our district is really putting an emphasis on it, because data is really what's going to help us drive our decisions. And so understanding the challenges right now, I do have a couple of questions. And I do know that, so you're saying that the K to 12, these are students responding and it's asynchronously. And so how usually then it's not like required by all students. And so how are we making sure that our ELL students who may not interpret even though it, as Deborah said, it is a lot more simple, right? But then still there is the language barrier and interpretation of that. So how are we ensuring that we really understand kind of the challenges of our ELL students, and in what other ways are we capturing kind of their experience? I also have, you know, usually I'm more of a quantitative person but during this time when we don't really know that much, because we're in this pandemic, that does this survey ask more, it has an option to ask qualitative questions, because this is really a time to really, you know, because this is the first time we're in a pandemic, right? So there's so much we don't know. And so I think during this time, qualitative kind of research and question would really be helpful for us to understand like the range of needs and challenges. And it's really nice to see everything put together as like a whole, you know, K to 5. But I also think there's a lot of developmental, as you can see from even the elementary, middle school, and high school, you know, they changes in how nervous they are. And so I would be interested also, see if you see any nuances between the grades, right? If there's a difference. And then finally, I would also be interested in learning more about what is the baseline. If there were research and data from other similar school districts and pre-COVID, to see if, you know, what we're experiencing right now is kind of the norm, regardless of COVID or not, or is really impacted by COVID.
So I can answer your first question, which was just about the asynchronous and the ELL families. So we, it's only K-5 who took it asynchronously. Our secondary students have taken it synchronously. So that has helped immensely. And we learned that lesson after the fall. So I'll say that just outright, that we've been learning along the way as we do this. But the other side of it is that the way the survey is designed is intended to help support kids of all ages answering it, which doesn't necessarily get the language barrier per se, but it does mean that our kindergartners, our youngest learners, are then looking at charts. They're looking at like pie charts in essence, and that's how they're answering it, to say either all the time I feel this way, or very little of the time I feel this way. So it's sort of a pictorial way to answer questions, which seems to have helped them in being able to answer that. Now, I won't, you know, go out on the edge and say that I think that all kids can answer this on their own without any assistance. I surely think that there's some adult assistance needed there. I think there are ways we can disaggregate that. I'm reticent to do that like in the immediate where we are right now, because I want to make sure we have sort of complete data before we start diving too deeply into that. But we do have a way, when we set this up, we set it up so that we had demographics set up, programs and services set up, so that we could then dive a little more deeply and say, okay, are there certain experiences that our special ed students are having that our other students aren't? Are there certain experiences that our English learners are having that our other students aren't? So we did set it up in that way so that we can look at that later after we have sort of that growth point and we've completed our grades. So I do hope that. And I don't disagree about the qualitative data. I think that the questions in and of themselves offer a little bit of that, but they don't get at students being able to provide that input. The part about the input really comes at the tail end of the survey when they check the boxes for what they need. There are a series of flags that they mark off, and we don't share that because those are student names attached to each of those flags. But they do flag whether or not they need support with one of those areas. It could be something as minor as internet support, and as major as mental health support or food. So we, as the counselors, have been checking in with them. There's been a lot of opportunity for conversation. And the nice thing is that they've said, I mean, nice in the sense that it tells us that the survey is pretty accurate, or that the kids are being honest, is that the students who are flagging in that regard aren't necessarily surprises to them. So it has given them another opportunity to have those conversations with kids and dive a little more deeply into their challenges.
I really appreciate that, the flagging at the end, and that we're able to follow up. That's really good to hear. Thanks, Noah.
Anyone else? Okay.
So thank you,
Nova.
Nova, and thank you, Sue-Ann. Appreciate your, sorry. Superintendent Kolaski, you want us to go to the next part with Jamie on the hybrid update?
Yeah, we wanted to just give a quick update on the data from the parent surveys because it was incomplete at the last meeting. So we wanted to give you the complete data on that, and also share the slide with the adjustment to the timeline for the grade bands. Jamie.
So if you recall, this slide was shared last time, and I explained that for the middle and high school, we hadn't had a chance to clean up the data, and we hadn't had a chance to clean up the data and look for duplicate responses, and really disaggregate it. And so we spent a little bit of time digging in, and we've got the unduplicated data now available to you. Fred, do you want to go to the next slide? So here's kind of the breakdown. So if we look at the middle school first, there were 802 IMS students who responded to the survey, different IMS students that responded to the survey. Of those 802, 141 selected streaming and 661 selected hybrid. So percentage-wise, 17.6 selected streaming and 82.4 of those who completed the survey selected hybrid. Our January enrollment was 1,017, and so the return rate with us receiving 802 was 78.9%. I'm sorry, it says 15 students. That number is clearly not correct, because if you subtract 802 from 1,017, it's more than 15. So we'll have to correct that.
I think it's 215. I think down here it's 215.
There we
So
go.
I forgot the two. I'll clean that up when we're done.
Thanks. So it was, as we talked about last time, it was communicated that anybody who did not complete the survey would be considered a hybrid student. And so if you add those 215 students back in, we'll have 876 total hybrid enrollments at the middle school, which equates to 86.1%. And then we'll have 141 students who will be enrolled in full-time streaming at the middle school. At the high school, we had 1,067 individual students, different students replied to the survey. Of those, 234 identified as full-time streaming, 833 said selected hybrid, and then we looked down at the enrollment for January, 1,446. So we had a 73.7% return rate there. 379 students did not return or respond to the survey. And again, anybody who did not return the survey or respond was considered hybrid. And that really was for planning purposes, so that we would make sure that we were accounting for them as space and desks needed in classrooms as we were dividing into cohorts. So with the 833 who did respond, along with the 379 non-respondents who are considered hybrid, we'll have 1,212 total hybrid enrollments at the high school. And then we'll have 234 enrolled in streaming. So that percentage breakdown is 83.8% will be in hybrid and 16.2 in streaming. Fred, you're muted.
Thank you. Trying to keep my dog noise down. So also in the last board meeting, you had asked staff and the superintendent to come up with a graphic that would help you to better articulate for our community the timeline. And so Craig Degginger had worked on this along with Superintendent Koloski as we put this together. So those are really I think the slides, Superintendent Koloski, that I believe you wanted us to address from the presentation that we gave 2 weeks ago.
Any questions from the board on the reopening? All of that, we'll fix that one number that was needs to be adjusted, but all of it is posted, not just on board docs, but also on the website and specifically on the COVID website as well, so folks can find it there.
And it's updated.
Good. Any questions?
I've heard a little bit that, you know, the second and third graders were happy to be back, and it's, anything of note to report?
I was at one of the campuses at dismissal time today and met with a teacher who said, as with anything, we started a little rough on Monday, but even today, by Thursday, they were getting into the groove of how things were going to work. And I think staff is learning to adjust and figure out what are some practices that are going to work better than others. You know, we've talked about adult support in the classroom, and in a meeting this afternoon, one of the instructional coaches said, some of the teachers are actually saying what I need is adult support with my Zoomies, because they're the ones who are maybe feeling like there's not as much attention on them. And the same teacher that I was talking to, second grade teacher, was saying how after the first day, even with the kids, he was adjusting where the camera was and where things were in the classroom so that things could be seen and everyone felt a little more comfortable. So they're working through it together as a team and a family in our second and third grade classrooms. And I know at the school, I was at Lakeridge this morning, and I know that the fourth and fifth grade teachers were going to start popping into some of the second and third grade classes so they could see how things were set up and how things were working, so they could learn from each other as well. And that's really all we ask, is that everyone continues to be learners. And we know we're not going to have perfection, but we are going to persevere and have patience as we work through another shift in the modalities.
Yeah, I think it's been, go ahead, Jamie.
Well, so on the very first day, it was so cute because some of the younger students, they were picking up on things that they wanted clarity on. Things like, you know, to their teacher, will you be repeating the questions if somebody asks in class? Or could you have somebody practice posing that question so that I can hear them and we can see what it's going to be like? And so it was already in their heads, they were thinking about. And so it was great to see that the teachers didn't even have to come up with the questions sometimes, because the kids were already there and thinking about what they might need and how it might work. So I thought that was really cool. And on a separate note, Nova and I had the opportunity today to go visit a local high school who is in a hybrid mode, who is streaming and doing the model that we are moving towards. And it can work in so many different ways. And it was awesome. We can't wait to get some teachers back there to see it. Because as soon as you see it in action, you see some of the possibilities. Like, we were frantically jotting down notes about things to bring back to our staff. Because it was cool. And the teachers, we asked them, like, what was your PD and how did you get this? And they're like, it was kind of trial and error. After the first day or two, you really figure out what does and doesn't work. So excited to get that rolling.
And it really does change with every class. As an educator, you can't just pull out last year's plan book and say, I'm going to do the exact same thing with this group, because every class of students is different and has its own culture and its own personality. And so every teacher's going to find those things that work with their group and those things that don't.
Great, thank you.
I'll share a little bit. So Gabe went back, and I would just tell you that I feel so blessed that our teachers are so welcoming. So I did the drop off today, and I picked up, and everybody was out there, and everybody was so nice. And I'm like, I don't remember if my elementary school, all of my teachers were this nice and this, like, we're so happy to see you. And so to consistently see that from the administrators and the teachers out there, I think they really felt welcome. And this reminded me when there was cheerleaders who welcome the kids, like I think at Northwood one time. I'm like, what school are you going to? And so I think that we're just really blessed to have wonderful teachers and like programs to really make our kids feel like they're really wanted at school. So that has been really nice. And of course, you know, and I didn't ask the teacher to out her yet. I won't tell her name, but if you know, so you guys don't Google who my kids' teachers are. But I asked Gabe, I go, so what's different? And of course he missed the snacks and everything, you know, having easy access. But he's like, you know what, my teacher looks even better in person.
Oh.
So I'm like, you know, and so he said she looks nice in Zoom, but she looks even nicer in person. I'm like, wow, that's really nice. So
thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you all for all of your hard work. And I know that a message that we will continue to send out is grace. And, you know, we are all learning in this together. And thank you for being the leaders of that. Is that it for this year? Okay. Superintendent's report is completed then. Thank you so much. Oh, you know what? I didn't ask Paul or Morgan if you guys had, is Morgan still here? Yes, you are. There you are. People keep moving around on my screen. Paul, Morgan, did you guys have any questions or comments you wanted to make? Nope. Okay. I just wanted, please speak up when you do, but I also don't want to forget you. Okay, so moving on to number 4, full governance process monitoring, board policy 1800 OE1, fundamental 4, analytical critical thinking for global awareness, the new superintendent's interpretation. This is a first reading.
So just a reminder, the student-focused fundamentals were, the board spent a lot of time on particularly what were fundamentals 4, 5, and 6, and discussing them, and then combined them into one new fundamental 4, which you can see here is to engage students in analytical and critical thinking in order to identify and address global concerns. So in preparation for the board's monitoring of this rewritten fundamental that combines the others, the board is asked to approve the superintendent's interpretation. So here is the draft. Tried to use some of the pieces that were previously in 4, 5, and 6, but also really emphasized analytical and critical thinking skills. But you will notice that also included an important part that we talked a lot about during our conversations in the realm of creativity and creative thinking, and also sort of captured from the previous 3 fundamentals, that cross-discipline thinking and how important that is in the overall thinking skills, is how are we making those connections across. The reference here is from Deep Learning, Engage the World, Change the World, which is a work from Michael Fullan, one of the great thought leaders in the newest pedagogy, particularly in this realm of analytical and critical thinking, with his partners, Quinn and McEachern, who actually are 2 implementers of much of Fullan's work. He's the thought leader, and they tend to be the implementers. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at this and read this. This is a discussion, first reading for this meeting. And then if there are any changes or additions, we can make those and bring this back to you at our next meeting in March.
Any questions or comments?
I thought this was really great. It covered, I felt like we might have lost something from taking out the old fundamentals, but this was very succinct. And I like the breakdown of critical thinking, analytical thinking, and creative thinking. That works very, very nicely. I appreciated the inclusion of the reflection onto the real world. I know we talked about that a lot in the critical thinking, and in the creative thinking. I also like the inclusion of leadership. Those were, easy ones to slip out. In the creative thinking, I like the idea of the entrepreneurial eye for economic and social opportunities. Some of the things I was looking for was making trade-offs, cost-benefit analysis, and it feels like they're there already if I look at it a little sideways, especially with the entrepreneurial eye for economic and social opportunities, perhaps is good for trade-offs and cost-benefit analysis. The other one I was wondering about, though, was impact onto others. How do the decisions I make impact or other people, whether different demographics, people not like me? That I didn't find popping out immediately, but everything else felt really, really good.
David, I really love that, that you brought that up about impact to others and impact of our actions, right? To really think through that and how, from an ethic lens. So thank you so much for bringing that out.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Maggie time.
Zoom. Okay, I'm off mute. Yeah, just this just for me brings up a discussion that I was having a couple of days ago with a friend who advises nonprofits on kind of their long-term strategy, and she mentioned something that seems super relevant here, which is that when you're thinking about kind of redesigning systems and making change in the world, that you want to make sure you don't create new systems that perpetuate the same injustices that the old systems do. And I think that's kind of also what David is getting at with the idea of trade-offs, and kind of what Tam is getting at with thinking of the impact on other groups of people, you know, that you know, you don't want to just come up with new stuff for the sake of new stuff. Like, you have to kind of think about the whole system. But I really like the breakdown as it is of the skills and kind of like what we can kind of teach to. So I like that. I don't know if it's possible to add in one more sentence or something, Donna, that kind of like wraps up that overarching approach, but that's up to it's obviously your interpretation. So, but I really do like the breakdown.
It really hit the nail on the head for me. One thing that I tell people, that while I got a stellar, you know, high school education, I didn't really learn how to think for myself until college. That's what that college journey was all about for me. And what I love about this is, you know, at first glance, I mean, I think what Tam said, or maybe what Maggie Tai said, is, you know, it's not overly academic. It's very real world application. And it isn't, and, you know, for our kids who thrive in other areas, non-academic, whether it's sports or fine arts, or, you know, there's ways that they can use all those other skills, the non-academic skills, in terms of, with Fundamental 4 and its practical applications. And I like that. It speaks to me in that way. And, you know, if we can help even, you know, some students really engaging in this type of work in high school, I think throughout, but, you know, until they graduate from high school, I think we've really done a service to their development. Anyone else? So I imagine the leadership team will take a look at some of the feedback, as this is a first reading, and whether or not there are any changes. And we will put it on as a second reading at the next meeting. Does that seem like a good approach? Okay.
And what about the measurements, the quantitative measurements and things like that? How do we see that?
You are preempting my announcements, Director D'Souza. We've talked about using a study session to go back and look at the monitoring reports from what were the old 4, 5, and 6, and start there as our base as to what were the metrics in there that we really felt served the purpose we needed them to serve. Do that in a study session, bring that back to take action on it. And I know that there's going to be lots of qualitative pieces. So that will make Director Din happy when we do the reports for this monitoring as well. How are we really getting those thinking skills working for kids, and both in classes and outside as well, because we know that this happens in those real world spaces. And so there'll be a variety of qualitative that we'll be able to bring in. But I was going to mention at my announcements that we have a previously scheduled meeting for March 4th that was supposed to be a site visit. And so I'm hoping we can maybe schedule that as a study session to all sit down together and look at what we did before, see what we think might work from that. Maybe none of it will. Maybe we'll need to start at a different space. I don't know. But I think there'll be some of it that we might be able to use from, you know, the previous EES surveys and some of the other student surveys that we've used. Might as well not reinvent the wheel if we have some pieces we can use.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. That was a very deep dive, so thank you for that. Moving on to number 5, partial governance process monitoring. Board policy 2190, highly capable services. First reading.
So this is a board policy. There is a procedure as well where we'll be making some of the changes. Jamie has been guiding the high cap committee over the past couple of years, and these changes are really aligning with other things that we do in the district. So for an example being, we call it special education services, not programs. And so trying to use that same vernacular and same vocabulary across our system. Jamie, any further explanation on the changes to BP 2190?
You've summed it up exactly how I think I would have said it. It's really just trying to shift the mentality of high cap is not a place. It's not a destination. It's a way in which kids receive services, much like special education. Oh, excuse my dog. Much like special education is not a place or a program that a student qualifies for. They qualify for services. Similarly, highly capable students receive services. And so this is just trying to get our language lined up with how we speak about it. So when we talk in meetings, when we talk about high cap services, people are in the habit right now, because we still have the HCP and the PEP, like PEP program, but we really want to shift it to talking about services, because service delivery can happen in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to happen in a specific destination.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
So this too is a first reading, and if the board agrees, we can move it to consent agenda for the next meeting for approval.
Any concerns about doing that, or does that seem like the plan? And I assume this has been vetted with the work group.
So we have spent all of our time looking at identification. So this year has been all about identification. In May, we will have a full update, but we are changing some of the metrics and ways in which we identify students, really trying to broaden what services we provide and how we identify students. And so that has been our work this year. The language specifically is not something we've talked about, but when we talk about in all of our meetings, we talk about services and not programs.
Okay, thank you.
As part of OE10, when we come in May with that report, we plan on giving the board an update this year on where we started and where we've been with the highly capable review from when we first showed it to you almost 3 years ago. We'll do the same with our special education review that was also put forward. And so we'll bring all of that kind of work to you to show what progress we've made and where we're still headed. So hopefully you'll kind of see those two things coming together, because I think you'll see in our special education and special services that we've really shifted away too from a lot of the programs we've had to services for students. So looking at both of them as services we can deliver across multiple schools and multiple settings. So hopefully you'll be able to see all of that effort from staff, teachers, and parents, administrators all come together. So that will be May.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 5B, Board Policy 1800 OE11, Facilities and Capital Assets, Construction at Northwood Elementary dedicated to the Adult Transition Program.
So although this is under Facilities and Capital Assets, that doesn't tell the whole story. There is a bigger story here, and you'll notice that Director Booby, our Special Services Director, has stayed through this, because I know that she has such a huge commitment and dedication to our adult transition program. And when Dr. Booby came into the district, she and I immediately realized we had the same concept of what we thought an adult transition program facility should look like. And she and I, along with Ty and Tony, have been having ongoing conversations as to what could it look like? And we've visited spaces and we've gone through a variety of iterations from, gosh, could we rent a storefront? Could we buy a house and convert it? Because that's something that I've done in a previous district, and I know that Sue Ann has done that as well. And we've gone through several iterations in finding the right facility that will really support our students in this program, a facility that will really enhance the transition into independent living skills for them. It needs to have a space where they can certainly come and go to do their internships, but also a space where, again, they can learn those independent skills, where it's like a small apartment, that they can have that safe space to learn how to be there. And so over the past 2 years, what we've really come up with is these diagrams and these drawings that you see that add a modular structure to Northwood that we think is really going to make the best setting for our adult transition program. Before Ty goes into the description of the facility, Sue Ann, did you have anything else to add?
I'm just excited and grateful to be working in the district, but the kids will, whenever, they don't know about it yet, but they will be excited. Our focus in adult transition, as you know, is independent living, future employment, because all students, no matter how impacted they are by their disability, deserve employment, as well as you know, being able to take ongoing continuing education classes for the rest of their lives to help them be part of the community. Along with this, we're working with the local Parks and Rec department and trying to come up with a more inclusive UDL design, universal design programs in the Parks department to help our students live this outside the community. And then our goal is not just for our most highly impacted, but we have students who have social emotional concerns, who have trouble finding employment after they leave high school. And we want a place for them to check in, get job coaching, get resume help, and make this a more inclusive launch to college and career if a student needs something. So we want to repurpose and reimagine the clientele that we're serving. And we want to make sure that all students are launched successfully. And if they're having trouble launching, they can come back and talk with us. We want to be that resource for our students in the district.
So Ty, that leads to you to go through the logistics of the construction project.
Oh, all right. I think Fred and I share the screen at the same time. So we, in selecting a location for the new ATP facility, we have a pretty great location at Northwood already. When we built Northwood, as you can see in the picture, we built a modular pad. It's already built for water, sewer, electricity, data, communications. All of those are built into boxes in the pad already. So really what we need to do is get some portables. One of the things that, as we're looking at doing this, is we don't want to just plunk down normal box portables that you see at regular elementaries, because this is Northwood's a new school. We're going to be using this space for a long time. We'd like to invest in some higher quality facilities. And so if we can scroll down a little bit, as we're looking at it, there's a few things that we needed to consider. One is, will we be able to have separate restrooms? And if we're going to be building it, we need to be building it not just for the future of ATP, but also for the future capacity of Northwood. Then this allows us additional space for students. That allows us additional space for clubs, activities, before aftercare, whatnot. So as we were taking a look at it and working with the vendors, we're splitting the building into and separating it with restrooms. The east side will be the ATP and will be completely self-contained. The ATP restrooms, which will include showers and vanities for life skills, those will be only accessible through the ATP portable. The general purpose bathrooms will be accessible from the outside for regular student use. The ATP program will be accessible from the ramp on the north side. Regular student use will be accessible from the south side. So we're really trying to give ATP as much privacy and autonomy as possible within the structure of the building. And as you can see, it's not just a flat row because the pictures further down in the document, when you're looking at it, it just shows a flat, but there's some variability to the facade. As I mentioned, these are Sage portables. They're not your general standard portable. These are built with additional windows. There's a row of windows at the top. We will be able to match the colors inside and outside to fit the decor of Northwood. As you can see, these are some of the proposed renderings. The main body will be gray, doors will be yellow. And as we're working on this with the vendor, we are looking at, we will have the opportunity to design the ATP section to meet Dr. Boogie's standards and the standards of the ATP program. We will have a conference room, there will be a bedroom area, there will be a kitchen area, there will be a living room area, and it's going to have washer, dryers, stoves.
And all handicapped accessible as students move through. So it's going to be designed for a student in a wheelchair to get up to the kitchen counter, to be able to load the washer dryer, to get to a locker, to change clothes for work, you know, those kinds of things. Someone in a wheelchair or who's differently abled is being considered throughout the entire design.
So logistically, there are a few things that we have to do. One of the things that is going to require some additional work is there is a right of way directly diagonally through the pad. It's a stormwater drain that runs under the fields and under the parking lot of Northwood. We've worked with the city engineers. They've scoped the drain and it's in great condition. And we will have to obtain a right of way access agreement from city council, but we believe that that there shouldn't be a problem getting that at this point. The city staff is very well in our corner supporting it. We will need to go through an administrative design review because we are adding a certain number of square feet at a certain value to district property. So we'll have to go through an administrative design review with the city. We'll have to go through permitting. We are planning on using KCDA, the King County Directors Association. It's a purchasing co-op. These portable units are already a part of the co-op. It's pre-bid for us, so we will be able to go directly to the vendor and sign a contract with them and move forward. We believe that the cost will be somewhere about 1.5 million once we include all of the additional sewer lines, running the water, getting all the electricity and all the lines pulled through the conduit boxes into the portables, as well as construction. We believe we should be able to start construction in July with an occupancy of late August, early September. So our kids will be able to see it next school year. So this is going to be a quick project, and we should be able to move quickly. Questions?
Are we going to start using the general purpose classrooms for the elementary school as well at the same time, or do you think there's a phase-in period where it starts as adult first and then we figure out how it all works?
The building will be built, both sides will be built concurrently, so it'll be available for use for the Northwood General Ed programming immediately at the end of August, September. How it's going to be used will be up to the Northwood staff and the district. But at this point, we don't necessarily believe we'll see all classrooms in there based on current enrollment projections. But it's cheaper and more efficient to build the entire row of portables now than try to add on a second set of portables in the future. So it just gives us additional capacity to, handle before and after care. Hopefully next year we'll be able to have before and after care again. But there's a variety of uses. Island Park uses some of their portables for rainy day recess. So we can find, Northwood will have no shortage of opportunities and ideas to use those spaces.
And is there space for staff as well for the ATP?
Yes, the part of the design for the ATP section will be a conference room and small office area that will allow staff to hold meetings, IEP meetings, work separately with students, and have some privacy and confidentiality. So there is some consideration to the staff use as well.
And there'll be no presence in Crest anymore for the ATP?
That is correct.
Are you thinking at all about what you'll do with it? Extra with the extra space at Crest, or is that space just going to immediately?
It's going to get sucked up pretty quick.
I wanted to just add on to what David was saying and comment that I really appreciate this approach, and I like the idea of building it all out now rather than piecemeal, because it also makes it much easier to keep it handicapped accessible. Like it makes it easier to kind of just plan how all the pieces are going to go together and make sure it's consistent and that you kind of get what you need from the get-go. So
I have two questions for you. One I imagine bubbling up through the community is, did you consider other sites or other facilities within the district to site this? And what would that do to the cost? The second question was, how does this fit into the long-range facilities master plan?
We have considered other locations within the district. There really is no other great location. We've got portables at all of our other elementaries. Most of them are not directly accessible off the parking lot, as this pad is. This pad is pre-built. It's it has conduits already laid. We just need to pull the wires through and get electricity and water connected to them. So really, this is a much more efficient use of district resources. Plus, it allows the students to have a separate access that doesn't take them directly through an elementary building. And hopefully it will give them a sense of a little bit more autonomy and being something separate and distinct.
Let me add to that quickly, Ty. Students have finished their high school program, and by no longer being on a high school campus, it will give them that and their parents, we're moving on to the next step, and no more yellow bus in a couple of years, and we're transitioning to a different life. And so a part of that is a reset for them as well, and their families as they move through.
We also needed, we looked at options down at the middle school. We looked at options at Island Park, but one of the reasons we wanted to keep it on the north end is accessibility to Metro and the routes that run, and many of our job sites are on the north end or off island. And so we needed proximity to that, and getting too far down south would potentially have created barriers for students to be able to access jobs and transportation.
And your second question as to the long-range facilities master plan, the adult transition program was one of the pieces that staff in particular reiterated repeatedly during those meetings. I think President Larry and Director D'Souza can attest to that. We certainly talked about special ed and having the space for our special education services to really meet the needs of our students, but we did highlight our adult transition program. When you think about when we built Northwood, the preschool facilities that is there is absolutely phenomenal and completely meets the needs of our very youngest students who have special needs that we need to really support them with. Our oldest learners, our adult transition programs, haven't had that experience. We've had discussions over the past 4 years, anything from could we take over the basement of the admin building and turn it into the space for our adult transition program. We have thrown so many different ideas out there and trying to find how do we best meet their needs. And I'm really pleased with this solution. This pad was built with the idea for expansion, just as every new school is. I can tell you stories about being a principal of a brand new school. In second year, there goes the 8 new classrooms. I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, we'll never fill those. Yeah, they do get filled. So I think that there was great foresight when Northwood was built to have this expansion available, and utilizing it in this way is really the best of both worlds.
Thank you. I appreciate that input. It was a little bit of a softball, but I knew that some of those questions would come up, and so I'm glad that we have a record of those answers. And I think it's a tremendous idea. It's a program that I think a lot of people don't think about when they think of our community, but it's such an important program that I'm glad that this important step is being taken to serve those students.
Are there any issues with having adults on the same campus as elementary students? Adult students on the same campus as elementary students?
And no, they're going to be, the time that they spend on campus is not the full length of the day. They're really going to be coming in for shorter blocks of time. And as I mentioned, they're going to be distinctly separate from the general ed population. By and large, it'll be several years before we see general ed students in the portables using them as normal classrooms, unless we have severe social distancing requirements next year. Knock on wood, we don't. But as I mentioned, the access to the ATP will be directly off the parking lot, right where that work yard is. So instead of having to come through the building or down around the outside of the courtyard, they'll just be able to come directly up from the parking lot into their own space. And there won't be really any interaction with general ed children at this point.
Except for we do have students who have jobs at the elementary schools as part of their work experience.
I guess, well, I don't have these concerns. I'm just raising it in terms of I anticipate that. And so basically what I'm hearing is there's no unwanted interactions.
Yeah.
Either.
Drop off in this area
What's
is
that?
very distinctive and separate for the adult students. And you also need to remember that this program has a lot of staff members that are supervising as well. So the supervision is all in place to keep everyone safe in both facilities.
I hope you understood where that question was coming from, just in terms of adults and kids and all that. It's just
Perception.
Yeah.
So.
Just one more thing that no one asked, and I expected one of you to. This will be, of course, out of our capital dollars that this will be allocated from. So it isn't something that comes out of our basic ed dollars. This is capital budget that will be utilized for this project.
I know that you, have spent a long time problem solving this and looking at, private homes, and obviously that is, challenging cost-wise on the island. And so thank you. I think, in terms of, I hear portable and I'm thinking old school portable, and this is very different from that. I think it looks exciting.
Yeah, even 15 years ago when you said portable, it was not like the portables that folks remember. Those really truly are temporary buildings. I like to use the term modular. It's a much more permanent structure, and they really can be built to replicate the structure that they're next to, and that really is the voice of experience. Like I said, I was at a new school and we were able to add modular buildings after the first year, and they looked just like they were part of the school from the beginning.
I like that term too. It's more like those kit homes, where they can sort of just like crane in something and then they kind of deck it out how you want it.
I think changing the vernacular could be a really effective strategy, especially as, we've got this still fairly brand new elementary school and the thought of, why are we adding portables now? So, just changing that vernacular from the beginning, I think would be probably a good move.
If you look at this document, it does use the word of a modular installation. So,
gotcha. I think time. Yeah. Go ahead.
And I think I'm so glad that we didn't go into the basement and came to this situation, this place in time, because it's really showing our value to our students, right? And these are also our students. And sometimes, these students don't get the recognition or the support. They're getting the support from us, but then putting, these students in the basement is really not the best. And so I'm glad that we're able to give them a really nice learning environment and really to elevate the importance of serving our students up until, as much as they need to really transition, out in the real world. So yeah, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, our next step will be to also work in developing more job sites, as our job sites have closed because of the pandemic. As Tony mentioned earlier, he really stepped up to the plate, and one of our students actually has done an amazing job with him and his staff, and actually recognized that as staff members putting the wrong gasoline in a vehicle, and the student stopped him and went and got Tony and said, I think there's a mistake happening, and the student corrected it before it became a fatal flaw. So just, our students are valuable. We have a couple students working in the central office now, learning office skills, and our staff have been very willing to work with our students, and they're doing meaningful work. We're not made up work, but meaningful work. And so just looking forward to building more and using your resources to build more of those abilities or opportunities for students, so that we can really have an inclusive environment and community on the island.
Do you need anything from us today? Just, okay. Thank you. This looks cool. Anything else from anyone on this topic? All right, thank you so much for your years and years of hard work on this. Looking forward to see it happening. Moving on to our consent agenda. Any motions? Someone make a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as posted.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Motion is to approve the consent agenda as published. Please indicate approval by saying aye or showing me aye in some way. Any opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is approved by a vote of 5-0. We so clearly are coming up on a break because you guys are killing me.
We're almost done.
We are almost done. So we're going to push through and finish, or does anyone want to take a quick? We're going to push through and finish. Okay. So legislative report. Mr.
Does the superintendent have a report first?
You missed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was moving right past you. Sorry.
That's okay. It's real brief. It's if we have agreement for the March 4th date, the only thing I'll need to do is work through the time. I know that Director Din frequently has a conflict during the day. So I will work with President Lurie and Vice President Tucker as to can we adjust that?
And I have a possible conflict now on March 4th, which I'll email you about. So sorry about that.
Okay, so we'll look at that date. If it won't work, then I will send to the board some other dates for that time frame. Second part of announcement. Thank you to my awesome team, including Dr. Rundle, who is still here with me. We started together at 5:15 this morning, and we will be together at 5:15 tomorrow morning as well, figuring out the snow. No one's allowed to do a snow dance. We have one more day because my theory is it's going to be a wonderful, happy Valentine's Day with lots of snow as the gift of love for everyone. But happy Valentine's Day, and watch your flash alerts for tomorrow morning. That's all my announcements.
Boy, and all the new puppies can play in the snow, right? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Now to the legislative report.
I've got a few things in here that I want to go through quickly, but you'll see in the agenda, I attached some documents to look at. So this is coming from the work we did earlier this year in our legislative priorities. I created 3 different sheets. It's just 3 different ways to look at it. These are our legislative priorities, our top 15, which are matched to our director area, which is essentially King County, the top 20 in DA2, and then WASDA's top 20. So you can reference it in 3 different ways to see how our priorities matched with our region and then with the state. And then at the end of those documents are our one-pagers, essentially encompassing what WASDA has and what we're currently advocating for in the legislature. So if that comes up in conversation, you can share those out if you want. The reason I'm sharing this now is while we're currently in session and work is happening, we are, believe it or not, just weeks away from putting in proposed new legislative positions for action. Because our cycle of advocacy is year-round. So March is when we will submitting new legislative positions for consideration at General Assembly. And if anyone has an idea of something that you think is missing, either from our permanent positions as an organization, so those are the overarching philosophical positions, or legislative positions, which are the actionable positions. Once those forms are available, I'll point that out again, but I want you to be thinking about that. And I'm more than happy to help you develop all of that and get it submitted and go through that process. But I want to let you know, now is the time to be thinking about those things that you want to see on the roster. And we're finding out, it was just mentioned in today's meeting, that we don't currently have a position in WASDA around students that are in foster care and services there. So you can reference that through our COVID networking call that happened today in the archives, where we can talk more about that later. But yeah, good stuff. Second, work on the Hill. We talked about the work that happened last week. Good news is that the ESSER 2 bill has passed and is on its way to be signed by the governor. So as we look at more information there and how that'll be applied, it looks like it's mainly driven by Title I dollars. So Mercer Island won't see a lot. There was at one point a formula being thrown around of additional funds that OSPI speculated we could receive up to $5 million. I pointed out to them that that formula probably wasn't correct, but we would welcome it. I was out there. 2 bills that could use all of our advocacy right now. Everyone, if you contact the House, Senate, we've got 1476 and 5128. Both have moved forward in the calendar. Which one is it? And that deals with enrollment and with transportation dollars, which are important. So we need to continue to support those. And then we have 2 things to watch out for. Senate Bill 5386, which is the bond majority. It needs support to get moved forward out of committee. And this would bring bonds to, it's not a simple majority, but it would bring it to a 55%, which is important. So anything we can do to help get that out of committee would be great. And then the other one that people are concerned about is 5326, which has to do with bus driver benefits. It's a really great plan and bill to provide additional benefits and secure those for our bus drivers. Unfortunately, there's zero funding attached to it. So that will not, so we would love to have input on that to say, this is a great idea, we'd love to support it. Here's how you can, is by attaching funding to that so that it's paid for. So those are two things to look for. All right. Yesterday, I was at the NSBA Equity Symposium, which is great. They do every year. The one benefit this year is I didn't have to fly to Washington, D.C. for it. I got to do it from home. I typed out notes. We had some really great panelists, and one of them, our general panelist, I'm looking for his name now. We saw at last year's convention for WASDA. He was a fantastic speaker. I can't find his name now. Sorry, I'm trying to save time. So things to look for if you are interested in coming up dealing with legislation and equity. We've got Reopening Schools Amidst the Pandemic, which is a lunch and learn provided for the Equity and Education group. That's coming up on February 17th. And if you need help signing up for that or be interested, I can help you connect. It's free. It's a lunchtime conversation, about an hour and a half. And the group will provide all sorts of resources. It's very much Washington and locally oriented in King County. And then the other thing, last thing to put on your calendars, the NSBA annual conference is coming up April 8th to 10th. You can register for that. The cost is around $675. Also, you can pre-register for the Advocacy Institute, which will be coming up in June, and this is kind of a save the date. So you can go to nsba.org and sign up for those alerts for the Advocacy Institute, or sign up for the annual conference. Will be entirely remote this year. And I think that covers everything for the legislative report.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, it's Brandon Fleming from the Harvard Diversity Project,
Oh, yeah,
with the keynote speaker who was amazing. Yeah,
he was so good. And he has a book coming out in June, everybody. Miseducated. He was phenomenal. I was, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to ask Brian, just since you can talk to all of us in this format, what is the Advocacy Institute for those of us who are new to this? Can you just give us like the one sentence?
Legislative conference is where we get together with WASA and WASBO and put together our legislative platform and go to the state houses. The Advocacy Institute is the National School Boards Association's program that does the same. We all get together, match up our legislative platforms, and then we head to the Hill and talk to our federal policymakers and legislators.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Board reports. Anyone want to go first? Okay, I'll go first. I was at the high school PAC meeting last week, where we talked about the hybrid, the proposed hybrid model that's now gone out to the high school families looking for feedback. I think it's a really great approach. It's more of a block approach. So you hybrid is Monday, Tuesday is half, and then 3 or 4 classes a day that are 85 minutes long. And then Thursday, Friday, the other half goes. And you know, the purpose is less moving around, more cohorting. It is long time, but hopefully teachers will adapt and plan for the classroom environment to be good for in-person and online. So there was that, and there was lots of feedback for that. I'm sure many of you attended the YFS virtual breakfast yesterday. I just want to give a shout out to the speaker was Kelly John Lewis, who presented, and that was appreciate him reaching out to the community in that way. I just want to, I've already heard preliminarily numbers. Yeah, it's a fundraising breakfast. Numbers look good. They've received a lot of donations and they're pretty pleased with where things are at right now. I just want to express gratitude on behalf of the district for the role that MIYFS plays in serving our students. And I think, you know, at least as far as young people, I think that's what so many of us are grateful for, the role that they play, and that we would not be able to serve our students in the way that we do without their support. I know Donna included in her updates from last week, the board buzz idea that Craig put together. And we'll want to get, I don't want to do it now, but we'll want to get feedback from all of you. We can do it after break in terms of thoughts in terms of that strategy. Just kind of a nice, easy, quick, easy to read little update with links to, you know, more details if people want them. And then finally, as you know, Brian and I have been meeting weekly with our Eastside Board Directors group, and we've been meeting with public health representatives regularly as part of that. We reached out, our conversation last week was really trying to look forward now that, you know, agreements are being made and the question of, you know, knowing what the vaccines look like and what the fact that we still have, you know, 6 foot distancing, really trying to look ahead and plan ahead for the fall and not wait until June to do that. Not that our administration's waiting until June, but for us. And so the idea was floated of requesting a meeting with Superintendent Reichtel with this group to really kind of look at some of our concerns about planning for the fall in terms of, you know, how these restrictions are going to impact our prototypical school model, frankly. And, you know, if we're at 6 foot distance, then this doesn't work for us. We can't continue to maintain our budget with a prototypical school model that doesn't fit our kids in our classrooms. So he has agreed to meet with us next Friday. I can't include you all because of our OPMI rules, but we'll certainly bring back any updates. And if anyone has any specific questions, please let Brian or I know. We did invite the superintendents, and I'm sure I can invite Dr. Randall too. I know it's over break. We offered a couple dates knowing that we all everyone has different breaks. Some people do and some people don't. So hopefully you guys can attend that if you can. So like I said, just reach out to Brian or I if you have any specific concerns. And that's all I have. So next. Maggie Tang?
Yeah, so I also attended the equity symposium, which was excellent. And in addition to Brandon Fleming, who I'm like a huge fan of now, and he's really worth looking up if anybody did not attend it. I also took some notes on one of the other speakers, and I'm afraid I also can't find that speaker's name right now, but I thought it was very memorable, a very memorable phrase, which was whenever you're making a policy decision or you know, a decision of any sort, if it touches even slightly on equity, you should ask yourself whether it exacerbates, perpetuates, mitigates, or eliminates inequity. And I thought, well, that's a really great filter to put over decisions of that sort. So I just wanted to share that. And then I also wanted to echo the thanks to Mercer Island Youth and Family Services for everything that they do for Mercer Islanders, kids and adults, and not just, you know, the money that they raise and the resources that they provide, but the public face that they put on talking about depression and other mental health issues, you know, getting a bunch of people to attend a breakfast at 7:30 in the morning and be thinking about these things, you know, and talking freely about these things. And I also wanted to to say thank you to the families and the kids that shared their stories of what their experience of living on Mercer Island and living through the pandemic has been, as well as Kelly John Lewis, like hearing his experiences and his perspective was really helpful. And it's so rare to feel like you're coming together with a big group of people these days. So thanks to MIYFS for that.
Anyone else? Yep.
Well, I just want to wish xin mừng, chúc mừng năm mới to all the Vietnamese students and family, and Kung Hei Fat Choi and Xin Nien Kwai Le. My apologies, I don't speak Chinese, but I try. But happy Lunar Happy Lunar New Year to all the students and families who are celebrating Lunar New Year. It is one of the biggest holiday for a lot of Asian folks, and it's a time to gather with families and friends, and actually teachers are what usually there are days that people, like the first day they spend with families, and then the second day they visit friends, and teachers are really high up in this whole hierarchy of people you respect. And so on the third day, people usually go visit their teachers to say thank you and wish them a happy new year. So we can't do that in person, but there's gonna be a lot of virtual Lunar New Year celebrations. So I hope you all can catch one of those. But at around 10 o'clock on Friday in Weller, which is really in Little Saigon, Chinatown International District, there will be a dragon dance on Weller, and then they will make their way around Little Saigon in the International District. So if you have nothing to do and you're bored, take your Zoom class, go into your car and you can Zoom in class and then check out the dragon dance around 10:30. All right, but happy Lunar New Year, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Brian, David? David's got nothing.
I have a few. I looked at my notes though. I took, it's not enormous. It's not the type of notes I would normally keep, but from the Equity Symposium, I have them and I'm happy to share them out for anyone who would like a copy. It was Dr. Samuel King, and his quote was, policies are continually doing one of four things: exacerbating, perpetuating, mitigating, or eliminating inequities.
Thank you.
I got that quote too. So the Northwood meeting was this morning. Was that just this morning? It was a long day. The car loop is something that they're continuing to work on. It's getting better. It's always a challenge, but with slower timing and everything, they're continuing to work. They mentioned that that's an area where they might be able to use some more volunteers or something to help navigate that, but they say it's improving. A question that came up in a couple of, in Island Park as well, is what's going to be done to keep red remote students from being lost in the shuffle. I think a lot of that was addressed in the meeting today in your presentation, but that's an ongoing question for parents. And on behalf of Samantha, I'm going to share, this is a quote, that she despises Freckle with the fire of 1,000 suns. And so that's some feedback on that program of Freckle. And they're struggling with that. I think that Principal Batliner Gillette is going to get them some supports and how to navigate that a little bit better. But that's good feedback. There were some questions from the Island Park PAC that was back on the 2nd, wondering when the highly capable testing is going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how that's going to happen. So that's a question bubbling up. I'm sure they'll be rolling out that information. Something that happened at Island Park at the PAC meeting there, and then happened again at Northwood this morning. I almost cried at the Island Park meeting, is parents began sharing how transformative the reentry back to school has been for their students. Several stories of how their students are completely different people now. And I welled up, and it was this weight that I didn't realize had been sitting on my chest, that there was this relief that overwhelmingly from both schools, the feedback has been wonderful about the teachers, the administrators, the reaction from the students. It's so let's keep that up. Let's keep going. But yeah, it was good information to hear. I met with Mercer Island PTA Advocacy. That's the council group that meets with members from the units. Some things coming up from there. Again, some concern from the streaming classes and the consistency within classrooms and how that'll be managed. I said that just like every classroom, everything will be done to provide autonomy to the teachers to figure out what works best for their students in those spaces, in those learning communities. And then that question about those streamers on the side and the Zoomies and how they're going to be supported. So because that came from all three groups, I thought I would point that out as an extra letter or a note just of reassurance for that. And two things to kind of keep an eye on. Well, one thing. So there's a Mercerdale Park refresh happening with a playground there, and there's an advocacy group working to maybe get them to slow down the process on that in looking at there being an accessible park for children. So keeping an eye on that peripherally, that doesn't really impact us, but wanted to point out that the work is happening at West Mercer Elementary School that brought up, where the big toy is being replaced and that work's happening. It's an area that I know very, very well. And that new playground will be accessible. So for families, that's not going to be accessible while school is in session, but it is a park that people should keep in mind for availability. But that's something we should keep in mind is happening. And then I was going to bring up the Eastside King County directors as well, the conversation with Superintendent Reichdahl. It's exciting that we're going to get him for an hour. There's some questions already kind of mapped out ahead of time. But yeah, if you have comments, suggestions, or questions that you would like, let either of us know and we'll do that. Tomorrow, we're slated to meet again with Patty Hayes and Seattle King County Public Health. And then rolling out, we've got a new document, the new reopening plan that's tied to the ESSER funds just got rolled out from OSPI this evening. Tomorrow, keep an eye to the news. The CDC has announced that they're rolling out new guidance for schools and reopening. So let's find out what the CDC is going to say. Any guesses? Any guesses? That's all I have.
All right, last chance, anyone else? All right. Just looking for a motion to adjourn.
A motion, we adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
By a vote of 5-0, we are adjourned. Everyone have a great, restful, relaxing, socially distanced vacation break from school. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks to Morgan and Paul for sticking around.
Nope, Paul's already gone. Thank you.
Feels like I'm out. Thank you, guys. Have a great break.
Good night.
Bye.
See you at 5:15, Fred. Camera's off.
Got it.